What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday. This week we have Loren Wood from Loren Wood Builders.
Monday.
I like it. I like that. We talk about scaling from 2 to 55.
And rocks. He's a climber, scaling rocks.
Yep, I forgot about that part. I was like, what are you talking about? But yes, we do talk about rocks.
We talk about a lot.
Yeah, this is
good.
Give
it a chance, because he takes a little bit to open up, but then we wound up going 3.5 hours. So he obviously did open up, but give him a few minutes.
Yeah, get through the first 30.
That's fair.
Yeah, and it went well. Some people take a little longer than others.
Tyler had to do it.
You gotta get your feet wet.
Yeah.
No, come in. The water's nice.
Tyler did all the heavy lifting in the beginning.
Did I?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I didn't realize. It's all right. It's usually Nick.
It is usually Nick.
You did not.
It's a team effort. John was
I thought give John about the same amount of time to chime in.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe he just needed John to chime in, and then he would talk. We would talk. John just got called out.
I did.
All right, guys.
Feeling him out. I didn't know.
Thank you.
I didn't know the guy at all.
Yeah.
You don't thank. This isn't the end. This is the beginning.
Oh,
enjoy.
Never mind. I take it back.
Yeah, guys.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Let's talk sustainability. How about a product that uses waste from coal production and turns it into siding and moldings that meet the tough standards of historical architectural review boards? And because it's so durable, you won't have to worry about replacing it. Do the right thing for the environment, your client, and your reputation. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com.
Do the right thing.
Loren, where are you out of?
Bloomington, Indiana.
So do you know Matt?
Yeah, not real well, but I do.
So, because he was the one that had connected us, right? Matt from Emergent.
Yeah, that's right. So his partner grew up with one of my project managers, and they've been so someone on my team, good buddies with his partner, been trying to put us together for a long time. And then just over the course of the last year, we've been sort of partnering a little bit on a project that we're going to be building this coming year. And so we've been meeting and sort of coordinating in the early stages of planning for that project.
So you guys are close to each other?
Yeah, about 45 miles.
Okay. I guess in Indiana, that's pretty close.
That's pretty close.
So what's that?
You guys are basically neighbors.
Yeah, pretty much. We drive my tractor right over there. Close.
So what's that? What's that partnership look like if two builders are going into something together?
Yeah, so I don't know what it's going to look like, but we're designing a house right now that we're going to be building up in Zionsville, which is in his neck of the woods. In
isn't that where Festool is?
Pardon me?
Is that where Festool is?
Lebanon
or maybe Danville? I don't know.
I don't think it's in Danville or Zionsville, but
Lebanon.
Is it Lebanon?
In Lebanon, so I'm gonna go with Tyler there.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're designing a project up there in Zionsville, and what I'm not excited about is bringing our entire team of mechanical subs, et cetera, up there, for a variety of reasons. And so, with my connection already with Emergent, I reached out to them. I said, hey, do you guys have any interest in sort of being feet on the ground for lining up the early stage subs and coordinating with us on that portion of the build out. So I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
What's your concern with bringing your mechanical subs? Just the travel?
Not so much travel. I don't have any concerns with the project execution, but I guess from a maintenance standpoint, as a homeowner, I think I'd want to be working with a local, if there's a plumbing problem or an HVAC problem, I don't think they're going to want to be calling down to Bloomington to try and get a maintenance person up there. So, I'm just thinking about what the value of having local folks down the road.
I mean, that's a good point. I think, we've dealt with it before, where we were looking at something outside, out of state. And we had the similar concerns, but even more so to the equipment that we were using was, we can get the equipment down here in Massachusetts, but is it something that's readily available closer to where that site is, for the same exact reason, warranty and getting parts. And, I know John's done stuff, we've talked about it offline and online here. It's like going a farther distance and being kind of outside your geographic location. I think we oftentimes forget, the end user, how that impacts the end user. Exactly what you're saying is like the maintenance and the, being able to address something, say like John, like a sump pump goes where you can get over there in 10 minutes. It's like, if that's out of state, that's not a quick fix.
Yeah. Well, more and more, I just had a conversation today with the Wolf and Sub-Zero, appliance salespeople came down here from Indy or from Cincinnati, really, and we're trying to get us to sign on to this builder program. But just talking about the maintenance aspect of selling those appliances, and I feel like more and more over the last several years, I've shifted towards thinking a lot more about, when I'm picking, say, a window manufacturer or an appliance manufacturer, what their service looks like. Because, if everything runs great, then in some ways, a lot of your options are the same. But if you're getting superior maintenance and care down the road, that's sort of the company I want to work with. So just thinking about doing something outside of Bloomington, I want to make sure that they don't have regrets 2 years from now when their furnace keeps going out and it takes them 2 days to get an HVAC guy on site.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things, especially from the sales side of it, because it's, you're looking at the immediate return on it. It's the best piece of equipment, or it's, it's the nicest one, or it does this and that. But it's when, it's when it fails you that it becomes the thorn in your side. And if you can't, we've installed a particular boiler manufacturer where getting it serviced it's an absolute nuisance. And it's like when it's the main source of heat and it's in the dead of winter and we can't get parts, or we can't get someone to service it, within a day, that's turns into a much larger issue.
Yeah, exactly.
So Loren, you specifically kind of wanted to talk about scaling. And I was digging your website and realizing that I think it was you and your wife that started the company.
Yep.
So before we get into the size of your company today, let's go back to kind of how that company was formed. What'd you do before? Have you been in this trade? What's your background?
Yeah. So I'm 44 years old. I started this company a little over 10 years ago. Prior to that, I was a high school math teacher for 10 years. And so a little bit of a non-traditional route into, to where I am today. I don't know how deep you want me to go into that transition.
As deep as you want.
Okay. So my family was not, I didn't grow up in the construction industry. I did grow up working in the family business. I worked in my folks' factory, starting when I was a freshman in high school. And so I've had a lot of experience working with my hands.
What was that factory?
They built signs. So on-premise electronic signs, time and temperature signs, message center signs, nowadays, electronic billboards as well.
Cool.
Yeah. So Watchfire Signs is the name of the company. Although my family since sold it and it's no longer in the family. But so that was my background growing up. I grew up in Illinois, ended up moving to Indiana, went to school, became a math teacher, started doing construction, projects. I actually started building furniture and got really enthusiastic about that, and then started doing small construction projects. And being a teacher, I had summers off, had evenings and weekends relatively free, didn't have kids, didn't have, for a long time in there, wasn't married. And so I just had a lot of free time and started building this enthusiasm and love for construction and building, and never really thought I would switch careers. But really just wanted to build my own knowledge base and had this dream of building my own house. So, a lot of my early experience was just with an eye towards, trying to position myself so that I would be able to build a house for myself. And through a series of events, a little over 10 years ago, I took a leave of absence to build for a year, thinking it was just going to be something, a life experience, and I'd go back to teaching, and I never did. So that's the big picture view, I guess.
The guy who's working for me right now is 34 and took a year leave of absence to not teach.
He's never going back. I'll tell you that right now.
He's also working for me, so he might be running back. Like, I'm going to go back to being a teacher. It's way easier.
Yeah. I actually have.
Teacher.
Say
What'd
again?
you say?
How long were you a teacher?
10 years.
10 years.
Sorry, I missed that. What, going back to that, what drove you to get into teaching? Like leaving the obviously working for your family's factory, but what was your drive to get into teaching? Were you just really good at math and figured you could teach it, or?
No, not really. I mean, it's sort of, looking back, it sounds a little bit trite, but I hated school growing up. I wasn't good at it. I feel like I'd gotten mostly Fs until I was maybe a sophomore in high school. And it was just a pretty miserable experience for me. I largely felt like a failure all the time. And I think looking back, I would have been diagnosed with ADD or something today, but back then I was just a bad student. And, as I got older and more mature, I was able to focus, and ultimately I somehow graduated high school and got into college and found success at that point. But sometime while I was in college, I came across some alternative education. In a sociology class I was taking, we studied alternative education. I thought, and I'd grown up in this small town in Illinois and had never really been exposed to different types of education programs that were out there. And I was really turned on by that. And I thought, had something like that been available to me, maybe I would have had a little better access, not to blame my teachers or the school structure, but that some of these different structures for schooling might have been a better fit for me personally. And I thought, I don't know what I want to do, but I'd love to have an opportunity to work in a place like that and work with kids who had struggled like I did. So I was already studying math. I was good at math. And so that seemed like the best route. So I wanted to teach in alternative schools, and I did for the entirety of my career teaching. I took a brief stint to go to grad school and then went back to teaching for 4 more years prior to shifting to this.
It's crazy how I feel like I was in the same boat where I disliked school so much, and then went along that path. And then for a minute, I had this idea that I would be a teacher. And I don't think it was that I had this ambition to help people. I feel like it seemed as though at this point, which I think a lot has changed, that it was a safe career path that I could kind of show up, go through the motions. I'd have summers off, be able to kind of do things that I wanted. My schedule was very, it was dictated by the school. I knew the hours I had to work, and I felt like I wanted to be a teacher for a while. And looking back on it, I'm so glad that I did not go that path, especially considering what they're going through right now.
Yeah, no doubt. So glad to not, I just feel a lot of empathy for the teachers who are struggling through, especially the ones who have kids at home. They're trying to teach their kids remotely and teach their students remotely. But aside from all that, in retrospect, it was maybe not the best move. because I hated school when I was a kid, and then I became a teacher, and then it was just like being a student, except you're there for life. You're never going to graduate. So,
Mhm.
it may be
I feel like it's largely a thankless job. And that, and I think, look, that's why I always, wonder what the driving factor was. And it, and like you just said, it seems as though it was that you wanted to help people that had similar similar circumstances as you did in school, and wanted to be, like, hey, I understand what you're going through. I want to help you through that. And I can see that being a motivating factor. But beyond that, it's like, I feel like there's, the majority of who you're dealing with on a daily basis just is, they're not thankful for what you do.
Yeah. And on that, well, two things. One, I think part of what drew me to construction was every single construction project I was a part of was immediately rewarding in a way that teaching never was. I mean, teaching's rewarding in the long term when you see a kid 5 years down the road, who has a successful job and is experiencing success in life. And you think, man, so proud of that kid. And, but those moments are few and far between. I think construction is like the opposite of teaching in that respect. But I will say that I think my experience as a teacher positioned me really, really well for my current job as a project manager and as running a construction company. And I hope no clients are listening right now, but I think that working with a bunch of kids who had unrealistic expectations, didn't necessarily want to do what I needed them to do, and at times I felt like I was at opposition with all of them, and we're figuring out how to navigate that situation without losing my cool and still keeping my eye on the prize was a great training ground for the things that I tackle now, both in terms of running my company and working with my crew and being a manager of people, but also in terms of, managing clients and subcontractors and suppliers.
So you started, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually have two teachers who work with me who is sort of very similar trajectory. Although both of them had backgrounds in the trades prior to going into teaching. But definitely feel like teachers, like if you're looking for good folks, I think teachers have a great experience base, as far as at least knowing they're not going to lose their shit with your clients.
Yeah, I couldn't have been a teacher now that you say it like that. So when you started doing furniture, was that shortly after you began to teach? Did you feel as though you were looking for a creative outlet for yourself? Yeah,
I mean, I didn't realize I was looking for that, but once I found it, it was like nothing I'd ever done. I'd worked my whole life. I worked all through college. I worked in restaurants. I waited tables. I've always liked working, but I've never, on that note, I became a teacher. And I remember my first year as a teacher, I just had this realization that I didn't like my job as much as I liked not working. And it was sort of an epiphany for me, because I always thought I would arrive and be at this place where I love my job. It was okay, but I didn't love it. But, I'd rather not be working. And then, the first time I started working with wood and creating something, I was like all in. It was all I could think about. I'd lay awake at night, problem solving, and I just never experienced that in other work scenarios.
Then what was the transition from furniture to more construction related? Was that financially it made more sense? You were just looking to kind of expand, an opportunity presented itself?
No, I think the furniture was just, hobby style. And then, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, bought a house, and we wanted to build a porch and so just for me, I think in retrospect, I'm not a very good trim carpenter. I'm not a very good finish carpenter. I'm certainly I'm not at all a decent furniture maker. I just liked that process of building and creating and working with my hands. And I think that the fact that it started with furniture was just incidental. And then it led into construction projects, just, out of necessity, working on our own home, and immediately loved that. And if anything, I liked that a lot more than furniture, because there's a lot bigger, more complex problems to solve. And I just liked that, having to keep all those different pieces of the project in my head and figure out a way, path through the project to completion. And once I started doing that, I just kept seeking out those opportunities, ultimately with other builders in town.
So you weren't working on your own projects in the summer, you were working for somebody else?
Well, initially I was working on my own, and then I started working for this design build outfit in town. Somebody I had known just through one of my restaurant jobs while I was in school. And so that was really my first experience working for another builder, not on my own projects.
So then you go through all of that and you go to take a leave of absence, and was that to just say, hey, do you think kind of subliminally you wanted to give yourself an opportunity to possibly explore that career path? Or was that like a small jumping off point that was more palatable for you? Or were you just like, hey, I just want a year off and I just want to work with my hands?
Well, hindsight's 2020. So, but it's been long enough that I can't really remember how I felt. I can say that I remember what happened. I don't think it was premeditated. I think it was the last thing you said, just thinking I'm going to take a year off and get an opportunity to work with my hands. And, it was the tail end of the recession. It was beginning or somewhere in 2010. Our local construction economy was still pretty slow certainly relative to where it is today. There are big budget cuts locally, and about 10% of the teachers were being laid off. And one of my buddies, with whom I was, close friend with whom I was teaching at the time, confided in me that he was going to take a leave of absence and take another job, and just, try it out, which is not a thing that teachers do very often, by the way. Most teachers, it's a pretty comfortable position. You get tenure and you're good to go. So it really had never occurred to me to leave the position. But then when my buddy said he was going to do that, I thought, well, shit, maybe I should do that too. And like I said, I didn't have any kids at the time. My wife had a great job at the university at that point. And so, honestly, I was a teacher. I wasn't making very good money. She could pay all the bills. So there wasn't a lot of risk. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do that too. And I'm going to just build for a year. And in my mind, I thought it would just be me and my dog working in this, listening to bluegrass, working in this, remodel, with sun shining through the glass. And that was sort of, what I imagined the next year would be like. And I thought I'd probably go back to teaching.
So it wasn't like that.
It was not like that.
It's funny because I've actually had people who left working for us who basically, quit because they said it was way harder than we thought, and that, they saw all of the finished photography and they had in their head that it was going to be this really nice, enjoyable process where you made stuff with your hands. And it's like, I feel like every day you're just trying to fix what potentially could go wrong or avoiding potential issues. And it's more so about problem solving than it is with your dog, sitting with your dog, listening to bluegrass. It's not as much fun. At the end of the day, it's like, yeah, that was cool, that was fun. But generally day to day, when you're in the grind, it's not just like, oh yeah, it's good. Sawdust is flying. We got on good music. The weather's good. It's usually like, oh, I just shot my finger. I just smacked it with the hammer. This isn't the right size. They dropped this off and it's broken. It's not quite as it appears.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. But I will say that, like, juxtaposed against teaching, what drew me, I think not what drew me, but what kept me doing construction projects was the all-in problem solving aspect of it. And the fact that I was mentally had to be 100% there to make it all happen. And in teaching, it just wasn't quite the same. And I didn't feel it wasn't nearly as intellectually stimulating, and you've got to be firing on all cylinders. So I liked that. I think that aspect of construction management appealed to me. It turns out it's a double-edged sword because laying awake at night, every night, worrying about your projects, turns out is not terribly sustainable, at least from a sleep management standpoint. But I think emotionally for me, that's what I needed, was a job where I needed to be all in all the time.
How long into taking this leave of absence did you realize you weren't going back?
Oh, I'd say maybe like 3 or 4 weeks.
Days,
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah. It was immediately clear that I loved what I was doing. And I missed a key part in just telling you, I've got an uncle and cousin who are running a custom home company in Northern Illinois, where my folks grew up at that time. And, again, being at the end of the recession, their market had slowed down considerably. And, so in this moment when I decided to take this leave of absence, I didn't, there's a ton I didn't know. There's way more I didn't know than what I did know. And so, my uncle, being slow, said, well, I'll help you out, and I'll come down to Bloomington every once in a while and visit your project, and just, help you figure out the things you don't know and make sure you don't make too many big mistakes. And so, that shouldn't go without saying that was a big part of my willingness and comfort in taking that little leap there.
So Nick had kind of briefed me off air that you've taken your company from being a relatively small company for a residential, for residential companies to a larger scale company. We're not talking global takeover, but something that would scare me. But at what point, or has it not transitioned from, like, you seemed as though you were getting that intellectual stimulation from the work and from trying to figure out how this all, putting these pieces of the puzzle together. At some point, unless you have put people in those roles, it would probably have to switch to guiding a team, guiding personalities. When did that switch, if it did, and is that more what your role is now, where it's less of the hands-on work, and what initially got you into it?
Trying to make sure I answer your questions here. So your question is, when did I make that switch from managing projects to managing people, and shifting from being hands-on to being much more of a...
Yeah. So Nick said you have like 50 employees now.
Yeah, 52 right now. Yeah.
52. So at some point, unless you just hired everyone else to be doing everything and you just still work on sorting those details out, things have switched from your passion or your drive being initially, it was the building and the putting the pieces together, and it's probably switched to now building a team or managing those personalities. And what does that kind of look like? Well,
there's no question that it's shifted from managing the details to being part of managing a team. But, there have been a couple of big key things that happened, and key people that came on that pushed me in this direction. I don't think I would have naturally evolved into just having 50 some people on my team. That was never my intent. I started initially, I just wanted to build cool shit. And, again, started out just thinking I'd like to someday build my own home. And then I, moved to just wanting to be a good builder, maybe the best builder in town, which is a small town. It's not, not that big a market. I just wanted to do a good job. So I guess, to take the long answer for you, at some point, after maybe four years, I hired, I'd started out with a handful of employees. I hired people right away. And so we were self-performing all of our trim and a little bit of our framing. If it was a big project, we'd sub out the framing, but largely we're trying to do as much work ourselves as we could. And then I hired a project manager to help. And at that point, my electrician was a subcontractor, and he had 2 employees. Said, "Hey, you keep getting bigger and hiring more people." And he said, "Meanwhile, I'm in my 60s, and I don't really want to grow. I want to be looking towards the end of my career. And, how'd you feel if I just came to work for you full time and be your employee and just do your electric work? And if I need more people to manage that work, then you can hire them. And I said to him, I said, well, I don't understand how that would be good for me. Right now I get all my electric work done for you when you're a sub, and it seems like it's working well. But we talked about it, and I said, well, let's try it out for a year and see how it works. And I wasn't real optimistic about it, but that was really a game changer for me to bring that in-house. Not because having electric in-house was dramatically different as far as like what I was able to offer, but it gave me a glimpse of what it was like to control not just your carpentry, but also your electricians. I mean, today I had, just fast forward 6 years or whatever, and that's Brad Snyder, the head of our electric wing. He called me, he said, hey, I've got our crew lined up. We've got these 2 projects. Which one's hotter? Is there a reason why they should be over here, not over there? And, we just talked about what else was happening on those 2 projects and where it made most sense to have them. And we have those conversations every day, or I need, a temp furnace hooked up over here because it's getting cold. And, being able to be nimble with those guys was immediately apparent how valuable that was in terms of just making us more efficient on our projects. So that sort of gave me a glimpse into the future. I didn't know it at the time, but it was immediately clear that it was really, really nice having our own electricians.
And that's just really snowballed from there, because I think, your comment about, well, how's that good for me, right? Because I think that's oftentimes one of the arguments. It's where, even internally, it's like you talk about having staff, having guys that are producing work, whether it's carpenters or in your case, you have painters, electricians, masons, having those guys as subcontractors, you basically, you set them up when you need them, and then they go away when you don't. And, you're going the radically opposite direction, where it's like you're basically adding, as you call it, a wing to your company, and it's allowing you to be more nimble. And I think, to go back to Tyler's question, there's a lot of turning points that we're talking about here in your careers, in the sense that you went from a math teacher to, I'm going to take a year off, to 4 weeks later, this is what I want to do because I like working with my hands. And even though it's not bluegrass and my dog with the sun shining every day, it's rewarding. And then you went from that to basically, it sounds like you started collecting people. And at some point there was this kind of light switch where it's like, man, this gives me the opportunity to be more nimble, to be, more agile and being able to handle more projects. And there was probably at some point another turning point or realization internally where it's like, I can make this a lot bigger. And, I that you enjoyed the project management side of it, and to be able to control that, I'm putting words in your mouth, but being able to control so many aspects of that of your business and what gets done, and having those people, not a voicemail away, but it's a direct call, and it's like they're on your project. I'm guessing has allowed you to feel as though you're not completely separating from the day to day. Because one thing I noticed on your website, like you have the 50 people that are in your company on your website, and it's like you're listed as owner, project manager, carpenter. And then there's project manager, carpenter, painter, carpenter. Like these guys have multiple roles. And it seems as though there's like this organic, like there's just guys there's just people working, and and everyone seems to have this like agility to them.
That's definitely the case. In I mean, snapshot in any one of our days, you come onto one of our job sites or come into the shop or the office, and we're all doing a bunch of tasks. And what you see on the website, that's just transparent truth. Like, every one of my project managers have built their own homes. They all have tool belts and swing hammers. I'm the worst carpenter on our whole team, but I can frame a house. And this summer I framed 3 houses. with the crew, and, last summer 0, maybe the summer before 1 or 2. So, I mean, we still, we prioritize, getting work done and being a part of the crew. And I think like all of you guys, my best days are the days when I'm able to put on my tool belt and put down my phone and get some work done. I still love that. But I will say that I do also love the company management and the team building, and the other things that come along with being a part of a big team and not just managing 2 or 3 carpenters and narrow my focus to that one job that I'm working on that day. And so I don't think I necessarily have ever thought about it like collecting people, but it's definitely been the case that as some key people have joined the team, there have been these big, these sort of inflection points, or I don't know if that's the right term, but, so about 5 years ago, after my electrician joined, we were still pretty small, under 10 people. I had a project manager, an electrician, and then my cousin, who was running this company in Northern Illinois. My uncle was, still bouncing down here to help me sometimes and still working up there. He called me one day and he said, "Look, you guys are getting busier and busier, and our little town's market has just never rebounded after the recession. How would you feel if I moved down there and worked with you?" And I was excited to have, he's an engineer by training, and he had, at that point, 10 years of experience running a custom home, building company in Northern Illinois. Frankly, I felt it was a little lonely down here, fighting my own battles every single day. I mean, you guys have every week to talk together and problem solve together. And, I listen to your podcast, like you guys lean on each other all the time. But, 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I was just in my head every single day fighting these battles. I didn't always know I often didn't know the right answer. And, and it's hard. And I was having a hard time making money. I was putting out good products, but everything else was really hard. And so my cousin asked if he could come down and join forces. And I was thrilled, to have his help and to have his camaraderie. And so they closed their business, and he and my uncle both came and worked full time with me. And what I hadn't anticipated about that was all of a sudden I had 2 more project managers and a really top heavy team. We could manage quite a few more projects than we had been. But under our model, where we self-perform all the carpentry, we couldn't just sub out all that extra work. So we ended up hiring a bunch of carpenters in quick succession to backfill that, void, to help do the work that we were now capable of doing. And then simultaneously, that builder who I'd worked for when I was a teacher retired and reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm retiring. My four guys, I feel a lot of responsibility for them. I'd love to see them find a landing spot." And, this all just happened at the same time. And I said, "Well, I don't know if I could keep them busy, Russ, but I could sure try." And so we hired those guys, and that was, 5 years ago. And all 4 of them are still with me, and they've worked every day since then. And, so that was a big growth point, was bringing my cousin on. Since then, my uncle's retired, but my cousin's my, CFO, and I'm a good project manager. I think I'm a good manager of people. I am not very good with the paperwork and financial side of things. I don't like it. I don't like thinking about it. And having Seth on board to really run a tight ship on that has been a huge part of how we've been able to grow and remain successful and remain financially viable. And if anything, not remain, but just get better and better at that aspect of it. Because I was just eking along with the finances. I was doing a great job building stuff, but as you guys know, that's not the same as doing a great job making money.
So how did you offset the amount of work that you needed to basically bring these higher dollar people in? Did you bring on somebody in sales, or did you just, more work came on your table, it worked out? Like, I feel like that would be super stressful for me. Hey, I'm going to hire somebody else and I need to keep them busy. Where it's like, I'm going to hire 2 people. I need to get more work to keep them busy. And then it's like, do we have enough work lined up, or did things just kind of happen naturally?
So that was super stressful. And I didn't know if I could keep people busy. And I didn't know how we were going to make the money. But I will say that every year we've been in business, we're turning down more work than we could do, as I'm sure you guys are doing every year too. And so I had this little bit of confidence thinking, well, we'll just take one more of those jobs that we would have turned down or pushed off. And that's how it worked out. As much as I worried about bringing on another person or two more people, I realized over the years that even though I worried a lot about it, there was always, you hire somebody and there's still more work than you can get done the next week, the following month. And, now at 52 people, I still feel that way. I have way more work today than I can get done. And I live in a small market relative to you guys.
So the jobs that you were turning down, sorry, Nick, the jobs that you were turning down, were they turned down because you couldn't handle the volume, or they weren't a good fit for you, or price point wasn't there, or what?
Mostly because I couldn't handle the volume, because early on with just me as the only project manager, the salesperson, I was everything. Although my wife ran the books until my cousin took over, so for the first 4 years. So yeah, all that really.
Now you have a little slush fund, right? Now that she's not seeing what's coming in and going out. Smart. Smart.
Exactly.
So Seth, his role as CFO, but he's also listed as project manager.
Yep.
So how does he split his time? And I think this is a question I kind of look at the entire team, like being that they're in different roles, but you say he does the books, but as a CFO, I assume he's more than just doing like the accounting. He's forecasting and figuring out like, all right, what sales targets, and this is where we're at for the year. This is how much more we need to sell. Like, how is someone that has that role as CFO of a 50-person company also project managing?
I hope he's not listening to this, because
He probably is.
I feel like he could do more. So Seth, if you're listening, I think you're not doing enough. But I will say that, he typically manages one big project at a time, whereas the rest of us project managers, manage quite a bit more than that. And so I think part of it is that, he splits his time accordingly. And, we all work really hard too. It's still a hustle. Like we bust our asses. I mean, I'm managing, I won't get into that, but, right now we're doing a passive house build, which is what I'm pretty psyched about. And he's managing that project. And then he's managing our office management team and our bookkeeping team. So he's not doing the nuts and bolts. He's not coding receipts and doing, the accounts payable and stuff. He does, he's involved with that, and that he oversees. We have two people who share the office management role underneath of him. But you're right, he's doing the bigger picture forecasting and monthly financial reviews, and just overseeing the bulk of it. It's a lot, but it's a role that he's really good at. And I'll say too that I think that we've been a great team, and it's helped me see the value of being a part of a big team. And, I'm not promoting this for everybody, but I'm really good at a couple of things, but I'm not really good at everything, and a big part of the reason that my company has been financially successful and just continued to be viable is because I have Seth running the books, and Seth managing the financial side, which if it were me, I'm a pushover. I don't like advocating for getting paid. I just want to put my nose down and get to work, and I've got somebody in charge of operations who manages where the crew's going every day, and he's really good at that. And I don't like doing that. So having these different people with different skill sets who can thrive in their own spaces has helped us to cast a wide net and be successful in our own individual roles and not have to be everything. Because when I had to be everything, the first 3 years, while I loved what I was doing and I had no doubt that I didn't want to be a teacher any longer, I also had doubts that I could do this for very long. Like I I was burning it at both ends. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was stressed out all the time. That's not like that anymore.
What was the biggest cause of that stress? Was it not making enough money? Was it not being able to, guarantee that you know where everyone was going?
I think it was a combination of not feeling financially secure, viable. So not necessarily not making enough money, but not even being able to get a good enough handle on the books to know whether or not I was making money.
Mhm.
You're sending out invoices and you're getting paid, but it was hard for me because that's not my world. Even though have a math background, I didn't love the bookkeeping aspect of it. And so I avoided it probably to a fault. And there was just stress and worrying about failure. I didn't want to be a failure. And in those early days, I didn't know, I just didn't know what the future held.
It's just funny to me that you want to reduce stress, but picked up 51 people.
And you know what? My stress is
Better now. Don't tell Nick that. Nick's got I need to hire more.
I hear you, but people say that all the time. They're like, "Oh, you guys, I see your trucks everywhere. You must be so busy or so stressed." That's not the case, man. I've got a bunch of really good people who do great work at what they do, and it frees me up to do good at the stuff that to do well in the areas where I thrive. And I mean, it's certainly the case that I have those people to manage, but I can go on vacation now, which I don't as often as I'd like to, but if the phone rings, I don't have to answer it. There's someone back home who can put out, who can, I was going to say put out fires.
You can say it. It's okay.
Yeah. One of my guys, Max, told me to tell you that mostly my job is putting out fires. So
shout out to Max.
You know what, Johnny, I don't put out fires. Other people do it. That's so, I know it seems like when you have a big team that it's more stressful, but I think if you have a big, good team, it's not. Just like having a really good trim carpenter, he doesn't add stress most of the time. If he's really, really good at what he's doing, he's out there like killing it, making your clients happy, making you happy and allowing you to focus on this other stuff that's in your scope. And that's what my team on a good day does. And I think if on a bad day, they do a lot better at their roles than I necessarily would.
I thought you just needed a good painter, not a good finish carpenter. Isn't that it? Your finish carpenter going to be all okay, but if you have a good painter, then that's where the magic happens, right?
But
Paint.
He's got 3 of them, I think. So
I will say that the paint has been a pinch point for me for years. And we just recently, within the last, maybe a little over a year ago, brought in a paint crew that had been a sub crew for us for 10 years, since I started doing this. And finally,
Nick.
Say again?
He's worse than Nick. Just gets an introduction and be like, all right, here's a business card.
Right.
Hire everyone.
Like, you don't even give them a check. You just give them a job.
But I think if I've thought a lot about this, I think if I lived in a different market where there were myriad subs who could execute better than we can in-house and keep, and manage all of our work and still do their own thing, I think I would sub more stuff out. But, our town is small and there aren't that many subs, and I find a good sub and they can do one of my jobs, but they can't do all of my jobs. And so we had to, paint is a good example of that. We've never been able, before we brought our own paint crew in house, we've always sort of had this hit or miss relationship with painters. And you guys know that's like a critical trade. It's the very last thing on the job.
I was definitely interested to understand what the market was there for subs.
There's none left. Like you're basically coming in your Home Depot and all the mom and pop shops are just closing because they're like, oh, we don't have any subs left.
That's
Let's
strategy,
just start subbing your own company out.
I need windows. There's no one here.
It's a small market. I mean, in Bloomington, I think there's maybe, we're a university town. But without the university, I think there's maybe 70,000 people plus or minus in this town, and maybe 150,000 people in the county. I'm probably getting that wildly wrong, but somewhere in that ballpark.
I mean, with respect to what you said, like hiring the right people and, having someone in the CFO seat and, just like the bookkeeping and all of those things, like you talk about how like you're not good at those things, the operations manager, when, you said in the first 3 years, it was really tough, but how far along how many people did you have, or how far along were you when you hired, say, I don't know if it was your cousin that was the first person that came in as a CFO, and you realized, holy shit, I can pull that off my plate and I can go back to what I started this company for. And it was to work with my hands with bluegrass playing. It's like, was it, I guess my question is like, was it, one person or one time that you hired someone to replace something that you realized you weren't good at, or did you go into it knowing that you needed to hire people to fulfill the role that you simply just weren't good at?
Well, the latter is definitely the case. And I knew that from the outset. I was coming into an industry that I did not grow up in and was not great at. So from the outset, I wanted to hire people who were better than me early on. I needed to, like everyone who starts a business, I think probably should. Now fast forward 10 years, I don't necessarily want people who are better than me. I want people with the right attitude who, we can develop and sort of onboard into our culture. But early on, I just wanted to get people who are better than me, both on the technical skills and also at the, the hands-on technical skills, and also at some of the management skills. But I think that it just happened sort of organically over time as I got some people in the management end and cycled through some of the carpenters. Some of those early carpenters, they were great in that they helped us build good projects and start to build a resume and a local presence, but they weren't the right fit in terms of the team that I wanted to be a part of. So after a couple of years, I also recognized I needed to let some people go. And if I wanted to grow as the company that I envisioned, I needed people who shared that vision and who shared some central, beliefs and values about not just the quality of work we're doing, but how we work together, how we work with the community. And so I think several years in, as I started getting some better people, I started formulating some really strong beliefs around who I wanted to be as a company. And also just realized how nice it was to work with other people who, with whom I had shared values, and it was just more fun and less lonely than going at it alone every single day.
Do you think that the individuals that you let go of could have got there, in the sense of like, do you think that they could have shared the vision, or you're shaking your head no? Yeah,
absolutely not some of those early guys. And even today, and this is an ongoing conversation on our team, but I feel pretty strongly that you can teach skills.
Yeah.
You can't teach someone how not to be an asshole, and
I know I haven't been broken of it yet.
John, you go, I think all three of us go in and out of being assholes.
Yeah, I'm pretty much an asshole most
I'm pretty
of the
steady.
time.
All right. Then I guess I speak for myself.
So what happens when you bring an entire company in, then you have to get rid of one of those people?
He's got a guy for that.
Firing manager.
The Undertaker.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say that we definitely have that position on staff here, but that happened with my electrician. But what I found is, so Brad, my lead electrician, came in. He had two electricians that worked underneath of him, and I loved them when they were subs, and I think we got along well. But they did not like being employees for me. And over the course of the next year or two, they both sort of cycled out. And I think that happens more often than the latter. Like when someone comes on board and it's pretty clear early on that it's not a good fit, usually they know it too, and they don't want to get fired. So oftentimes it just sort of fixes itself,
I think that's something a lot of guys struggle with, where it's like, even myself included, it's like having that vision, and whether it's communicated, throughout the company or just in your head, right? Getting everyone on board with it, or communicating it in a way that's effective to the team, in the sense that, and you oftentimes fight for a lot of these guys where it's like, no, I know they want the same thing, but in reality, they just might not. And, we've had similar circumstances where we've let some guys go because they didn't believe in the vision, and that's okay. At the end of the day, it's like, it sucks, but it's like, hey, if this isn't what you want to do, then this isn't what you want to do. And I ask the question of like, do you think you could have taught it, knowing that it is really something you can't? But I think it sounds like you there was a point in doing this that you realized how important it was, and you've kind of communicated that through even your website on who we are, who this company is, and and putting that kind of forward, and as step one, like, this is the type of people that we're going to be, and we're going to you're going to work with, and everyone is basically signing on knowing that immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, when we, so I didn't know that year one, we sort of developed that over, a handful of years, a voice of who we were as a company. And, one thing that I realized as the company grew was that I didn't just like building cool shit, but I also liked being involved in the community. And I liked, working with a group of people that I like showing up with every day. And I liked being I like being in the service industry, and I liked treating people well. And I like providing a client experience that was positive. And in the same way where when I wanted to, when I was a teacher and I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to help kids have a good experience in the classroom. I think I shifted to realizing that, we have a very easy access to improving people's quality of life just through giving them a good experience, and so I sort of developed these, what I call now, guiding principles for, who I want to be as a person in this construction company. And over time, we sort of solidified that into, a set of guiding principles that we talk about when we interview people, and we use them when we look at when we do a 3-month review, and we use those as the launching point for our annual, we don't call them reviews, but sort of our annual professional development or goal setting meetings. So rather than saying like, do you show up to work every day, and can you, how do your miters look? Or, we talk about, are you paying attention to the details? How are you contributing to a highly positive working environment? How are you contributing to, providing a highly positive client experience, et cetera. So taking those values that we've developed over the years, and making sure that our employees know day one that that's what they're signing on for, helps, because some people go through the interview process and their eyes are wide open. They're like, oh, I don't know if this is a company I want to work for. So we try to be real transparent about that.
But what about, sorry, Nick, what about the people that, we talked about this in the last podcast, but I didn't ask the question. I'm with you. We all try and, like Aaron was like, yeah, I try and comes out guns blazing and explain everything that's going on. So that way you're either in it or you're not. But what about everyone that's wants to be in it, like Tyler said, but doesn't really understand what's involved, how much it's not, like Aaron in the last podcast, you may not have listened to it yet because it came out today. It was that, like, he's like, yeah, we're not a 7-3 company, blah, blah. And when I really listened to it, I was like, but how, you can't demand from employees. You get me? You can create an environment like, I work more than anybody else. I can instill that based on leading by example. But when you're at the interview, they obviously want the job. They're there. So they're going to tell you whatever that they want you to hear, and what they think they can become. But how do you, at that 3-month review, when you're at that honeymoon stage, how do you see through them? You get me? Like, once they hit the job site and you get a couple of reviews from your not subs, actually, your other employees, and maybe a couple of clients, how are you then instilling that change that their mentality isn't where it needs to be, or their drive isn't there, or imagine, I mean, it's 7 to 3. Imagine if they worked 8 hours, or they took an hour lunch and everyone's buzzing around and this one kid just sitting in his car, or Indian style in the corner of the room. You know, it's like, how do you then, how does your company, do you have a guy for that? That's just a motivator. He just comes in and is like, "Wow, let's go."
Hype man.
That's my operations guy.
He does have a guy.
But you know, that's tough, man. It's tough. And frankly, like those people don't fit. You know, that's the bottom line. And
but how much time are you given? Like so you have 52 people, 51. How are you able to see that? Or what feedback are you listening to? You get me? Like what, like for the person that's listening to this going, all right, I get all that. We reinforced it from the last podcast we just had on, but how are you doing that? Like, are you just like buzzing by there like every day for the first month? I don't know. Just tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's one thing that we're doing. I think that the first thing that you said, like I lead by example. I work my ass off. Everybody sees that. There's no one who on our company who looks at what I do and doesn't realize that everyone's got to pull their weight here. So there's that. And I think that, you know, that permeates. And then I think that aside from me, everyone else does the same. You know, if there's one guy being an asshole to other people on the crew, that poisons the whole thing. But that does not happen because that guy gets fired, or that just doesn't, you know,
I guess I'm looking for like a 3-strike rule, something that's kind of tangible that someone can take away from.
So I wish, you know, and that's one thing that we're doing this year, really at the push of a couple people on the team, is we're creating a employee handbook. Like I've just never done that. You know, we grew, I feel like organically, and all of a sudden people are like, what are our policies around this? I'm like, I don't know. We don't really have a policy there. We just like do the right thing. But so now we're putting together this employee handbook, and that's one of the things that a lot of people feel is lacking, that we don't have this 3 strikes rule, or this, you know, this set, you know, what happens if you're not performing. Historically, what's happened if people don't perform is that, you know, we roundabout try and shape them without being too much of a jerk. And then at some point I get fed up and I fire them. And that's probably a weakness that I have, that I'm non-confrontational, but at the same time, I'm decisive enough to just let somebody go when I feel like I've had enough time.
Do you personally have like this timeline in your head that like you have to cut off the emotional connection before it gets too deep? You get me? Like someone at 6 months in, you're like, it's 6 months. If I want to give them a shot, then it's going to be Valentine's Day and everything else. Like, how do I break up?
I feel like that timeline is like 2 months, man. I feel invested in these kids from like right away. And these, you know, I mean, I think maybe that just comes from my background as a teacher, and specifically as a teacher with, you know, an alternative school setting with kids who are struggling, that I like immediately wanted, you know, I don't just want this kid to be successful in my company. I want him to be successful in life. And I'm like, oh God, they have kids. And what if I lay them off and now it's COVID, and like, are they ever going to get another job? And, you know, it's hard. Like you take responsibility for those people. But I will say that as we got bigger and I saw how poisonous 1 or 2 people could be on your crew, and I recognized that, like, as much as I want to see these, you know, as much as I buy into whoever the new people are on our team, I have such a built-in responsibility for the crew who's there for the long haul, that I don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. You know, if someone's not fit, I just know that we need to get rid of them. Because one thing I think the biggest thing that I've come to believe at this point is that, you know, building good projects is hard. It's hard to execute the details. It's hard to not miss stuff, but building a team and building a culture is tougher, and maintaining that culture, because you can't look at it and say, oh yeah, we're here. You know, this part looks good, and you know, you can't do a walkthrough and a punch list and make it good. You know, it's just this constant maintenance, and that a couple people or one person can bring that all down. So that's where I'm at today. I feel like as soon as you know something's broken, you need to cut it off.
Do all of your employees have, so you said that they kind of see your work ethic and what you're doing. do they have access to you in a manner that they actually kind of see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Because I do think it's important. I don't know, and this could be completely wrong, but that your employees would kind of have a little bit more respect for you if they feel like you're putting in the time as well. Like it's not just handing it all off to them and they're making money for you, that you kind of have stake in this as well. And I think that sometimes they don't necessarily see the back end. They don't see the phone calls. They don't see the headaches. They don't see the legal issues, bidding jobs. They don't see all that. They just, what they may kind of perceive as they want to look at what they're doing. There's this tangible aspect of what they're doing, and they kind of want to see that on your end. Do they have access to kind of seeing what you're doing, or is it just hearsay? Because I think that is an issue when you get to that size where it's like, well, I'm working my butt off and we're making them money and they're just sitting in an office, air-conditioned office. And,
there's a false sense of accomplishment by certain team members that don't see it, don't understand it, and they're just blind to it. Some people,
because there's a ton of stuff and headaches that we're all dealing with on a day-to-day basis that like we should be making money. And if you were to look at the hours, right, like the hourly rate that you are making with the headaches and the phone calls and getting up and bidding stuff and putting out fires and everything else, you're probably making what your employees are making with the amount of time that you put into it, And
they get 8 hours of sleep.
They don't see that.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure that a lot of them don't see it, but a lot of them do, and we're a pretty tight knit little team here. And so
you say little team.
Well,
what's big to you? Just the whole town?
I guess, but we are tight knit. I'm not just saying that. And maybe I'm just being presumptuous and assuming that they see what I do and the work that I put in, but the people with whom I work really closely definitely do. I work as certainly not enough, but when I can put on my tool belt and get out with the crew or frame a house, like I'm the first person on the job site every single day. Like I don't come in at 8:30 and ask them, what's happening. I'm there at 6 getting shit laid out and making sure that they see that, that I'm not resting on my laurels and that I'm putting in at least as much as not, if not more, as everyone else. But there's no question that as the team gets bigger, that some people are going on faith that everyone on the team is pulling their weight. I'd say that the bigger issue, if I had to guess, is not that people on the team worry that I'm not pulling my weight, but that they can't see what the other project managers are doing. So there's project managers who are like, oh, I don't know if, this other project manager's working quite as hard as I am. He's only got 3 jobs and I'm running 5 jobs and his job.
But Bill's got all the easy jobs.
Yeah.
I get the hard ones. Like what?
So
he got the new truck. I got the used one.
And they make the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't think there's ever any getting around. That's just part of team management, and part of what I was.
You casually just said that, but that's like I always look at it like a pro NHL coach. Like he's not really teaching like fundamentals of the game. He's there just to be this person that's the gel that holds everyone together so that there's camaraderie, that there's an overwhelming process that everyone can follow. And that's what our job is to basically, I'm not teaching someone how to swing a hammer. My goal is to put everyone in the right place so it flows. Because without me, in a way, then it can be all disjointed and it can be this bumbling and rumbling. And I look at it like it's the difference between having Waze and jumping on the highway or not having a phone and running through the woods. Like you could be going in circles. So from an owner's perspective, it's our job to not just see the micro details that we're looking for on the project, but how people are talking and what they're talking about. And if the same thing's being talked about, like you said, hey, they want an employee handbook. I had my meeting last week with my guys. I was like, what can we do? Blah, blah. And the guys were like, we have some process we're going to set up and create. And, And the guy's like, yeah, process would be huge. And I'm like, all right, like what process? And dude, they couldn't come up with anything. I was just like, so it's like when the guys are like, hey, or guys and girls, like we should really have a handbook. It's like, what do you want in that handbook? Like I made sure that when people ask questions, I didn't like drill down like an asshole, like it sounds right now. It was more like, so what do you need? Like, I'll do it like next week, you know? And it wasn't like nothing. It was like everyone was following along in the conversation and like thumbs up. But when it came down to reality that, hey, if you want to jump in and grab a sheet and you want to drill down on like pre-sheetrock process, like what do you got?
Do you just think that they wanted you to do it for them?
Well, I mean, everyone like I feel like Benny and I are talking. I say like a ton, by the way. Listen to the podcast. It's so painful.
Oh,
so painful.
you got to stop listening to it.
I wanted to again because I was like, it's just in the cat. I've lost my train of thought.
Something about Benny.
Oh no, Benny and I are talking about like what we want to, put into processes, and we're writing down stuff and we're drilling down on it. And it's like, there's a point where like, Nick, I give you shit about it. It's like, what do you do about, I want to write this process. I want to do this. And at one point, does it feel good to you personally to write a process because it's out there? But on the flip side, it's not being seen by anybody. So it's this false sense of reassurance that you have that I wrote this, people are following it. And then I was taught by a business coach years ago that one of the things I wasn't doing, and the hardest thing to do when you manage these projects, is how do you circle back? You can delegate, like when you get it, it's like, oh, I'll do this, I'll give this. You give it all up, but you still have to circle back at the end of the day. Like there's times where I'm on my stories at like 7:00 at night, making rounds, because it's like, I gave all these things up. And that's what wakes me up at 4 a.m. is like, all right, well, did it get done? And do I have to like build the trend has been a huge help when people put photos on. I know it's, when I can see the photos of what, like, hey, otherwise I'm driving to that site to see that thing that didn't get done. And I'm like, all right, you know what? This is a problem. And Benny and I were both like at the meeting, daily logs aren't an option. They're mandatory.
Absolutely.
And that's huge because there's too many projects. And I don't know how you do it with 50 employees and window projects and deck projects and renovations and new construction and having a development. Like, I don't know how you do that. And I want to know. So open up. And it's just, how do you do all that and then keep that circling back thing alive? Is your production manager? It's because you have to check on your PMs. What's that high level team look like that's circling back on all the delegation?
So, I mean, I think about that a lot because I listen to your all's podcast, and that, that's a common theme is, how do you, I think from you in particular too, is like, how do you delegate and make sure that stuff's getting done and don't drop the ball and make sure that they're doing as good a job as you're going to do. And I guess one thing I'll admit right off the bat is I don't think that I think that if you get to a certain size, that not everyone's going to do as good a job as I'm going to do necessarily. But some of them are doing a lot better job at some things than I do. And I guess I'm just introspective enough to recognize that I was never perfect at every aspect of my job. I'm really good at some parts of it. And so I guess I just come to it with a little bit of humility, recognizing that my jobs aren't perfect. If you roll by my job site, you might see that the street hasn't been, push broomed in front of it. And you might be out there with your fucking broom, making it look good.
You're not allowed to listen to the podcast and then use every example we have against us.
But no, I think, every time I hear something like that, I'm like, oh shit, I need to get my broom and get out there and clean up.
But we always talk about execution, but what about liability?
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm like Tyler. I know why he doesn't have employees and he hates subbing things out, because he can execute better than most people he brings in house. Like, that's just the norm. Like, I literally, and I would not want Tyler to walk one of my sites. Like, he might think less of me personally as a friend after walking one of my projects. Like, just, I think it's top notch, but I
jobs before.
I know. And
we're still friends.
I still worry about it.
We're still friends. Don't worry.
But I guess it's like, how do you Like we had this project where we have to, like the client decided to dig down an extra 2 feet in ledge and there's no footings underneath the foundation. And I'm circling back and I'm like, I'm really trying to do a better job of don't just ask me what to do next. Like, tell me what your plan is. Like every day I hit a site, I'm like, give me your 2-week outlook. That's like my driving point is because I want you thinking the 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, not today.
We don't have all these problems solved, man. Just because I'm working with a team of 50 people and I feel like we're having a lot of success across the board. We still struggle with all that same stuff, but I will say that looking back to when it was just me, it was a bigger struggle. Maybe I was on that job site every single day and the job site was ship shape. Like that first house I built was clean every single day. There was never a dust spot anywhere. I didn't make any money on that house.
Best laborer ever.
I
admit that every day. I'm like, I could be a killer laborer.
Right.
I was not, and I'm still not afraid of pushing a broom. I can haul and back up a dump trailer better than almost everybody on my crew, save for a couple. But, there was a lot I wasn't doing well. And so fast forward to today, I think maybe there's, people aren't pushing a broom as good as I am, but there are other things that we're doing well as far as the liability. That's real. I think insurance is really important. And then also, my management responsibilities include, going by the key job sites and looking at, putting a critical eye on stuff. And just like you guys, every time I drive by or in or through a job site, I'm just looking around. I'm looking to see what's broken, what's not right, what's dirty, what needs fixed, what sub isn't there. And, I don't think it's that different from what you guys do on your own job sites. And you also get to know, like, I don't have to go by Seth's job site because, he's obsessive compulsive about, I know what people's strengths and weaknesses are. And, you guys had somebody on a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember what their name was, but it was a local builder who had a pretty big team. And he was talking about his different project managers and how, he knew which projects were right for which project managers. And that's definitely the case with us. And we talk about it in-house. We know what our strengths and weaknesses are.
So the kid that's on his way out, you give him all the bad clients. How's that work? Is that for real? That one sucks. Give it to Billy.
It's always Billy.
No, there's no Billies on this team.
No Billies.
I think that when you're at that size, you kind of have like layers of things to protect you, and there's an overlap of responsibilities as well. So it's, with 50 employees, and how many jobs you guys have going at once? How many?
I don't know.
For anyone not listening, he just had a seizure. He just started tuition.
25 to 45.
Yeah. So there's no way that you're walking every job and you're catching the mistakes.
No, there's jobs. I'll be the first to admit there's jobs I've never set foot on. We've executed. I didn't meet the clients. We did a great job. We got paid. They were super happy. Our crew executed. There's no doubt that I'm not on every single job.
So is that like window installs? I'm just trying to figure out what level of project that.
No, we don't do a ton of window installs. We do a ton of renovations. We do a fair amount of new construction. Kitchen renovations. We don't do bathroom renovations that are too small. We do, screen porch additions. I love projects like that.
I just didn't know if there was a caliber that you're like, I can let that roll, or are you just the guy swooping at the end for the final check and like, this is great, right? Shake hands, quick hug.
I definitely do swoop in for the final check. The clients, they want to know that, honestly, I think clients, I've had multiple clients who have been upset in the end that we never put a sign in their yard, and they felt like maybe we didn't feel like their project was like up to snuff and we weren't proud of it and didn't want to showcase to the town that we were doing.
That's funny.
And, and I think that's a real thing. They hire us because of our reputation and they want to know that we're excited about it and we're proud to have worked on that project. So I'm real careful to make sure that people know, that we're invested in it, even though I'm not the project manager, maybe Joel is, or Dan or whomever. But to your question, Johnny, I don't think like, it's not like a certain caliber of job that I don't go to. If things are going really well, and, you know, we all talk to each other and communicate with each other all the time. It's clear which jobs are going really well and which aren't. And, you know, we circle the wagons around the jobs that are struggling. So in some ways, the squeaky wheel gets the grease there.
I just feel like you have to at that scale. There's just no way that you're going to be able to it would be impossible to do that, you know, with 4 or 5 jobs if they're highly detailed jobs to keep everything going straight. You have to depend on your systems, you have to depend on your employees, and you have to depend on some sort of overlap of responsibility that if so and so doesn't catch it, the next person's going to, which also probably helps, you know, with like having your electrician in house, where how many times do you have a sub come in and they're like, well, this is going to make my life easier, but what about the guy who's coming after me? Like they're in and out. And if it makes their life easier, you're not there to tell them, or you start having sub trades in house. It's just like me self-performing, where I know I could do something that's going to help me when I go to trim it when I'm doing tile, you know, or I could leave something out that's going to help me, which ends up creating a better finished product. And sometimes that takes longer, but I have that control there, which I think having people in house helps.
That's a huge point. And I think that goes back to the value of self-performing. You know, if all you are doing is managing subs, you better fucking be on site every day, because who else is making sure that they're doing their thing? But if you have the same finished carpenter, you know, and the same painter and the same electrician, and they know what's gone wrong in the past. And when they see red flags, they're like, hey, you know, we're not ready for paint. This, you know, this drywall looks like shit. And we've got, you know, whatever the red flag they're throwing out there. But I think that's where having a team that executes this to the same standards day in and day out and is working to maintain that same level of quality, they know what to look for, you know, and so I'm only one person, but all of my crew is on, you know, consistently being held accountable to the same level of detail. And also, you know, we work really hard to circle the wagons around problems. We do a post-mortem on every job. We look at everything that went well, and if the job went smoothly, then it's not a very long discussion. If the job went poorly, then you know it's a really long discussion, and we've got a sheet that we look at, and we look at the numbers. We know, was it profitable or not, and but then we, you know, that's just a little tiny part of it. But we look at how the crew executed. We look at how the subs executed. We looked at the design. We look at what lingering, you know, liability issues might still exist on the job, and we try to both make sure that we understand how we're leaving that job and whether there's anything there that we need to be aware of into the future. And we also just look at how we can learn from what went well and what went poorly on that job and let that inform our future work. And that's been really huge in terms of getting the whole team, you know, to wrap their mind around how to maintain a level of quality.
I think that's tough, that you have to spend so much time doing that post-mortem, as you called it, and you have to basically inventory every job and do a full assessment of that, which, you know, that's going to be built into some sort of cost of you operating business, or the mistakes or whatever it may be, or the learning curve. And that's something that I don't run into, because I'm not going to get done a job and sit down with myself and be like, you know, I should have done this differently, or that, like, I know that going into it. I don't necessarily need to convey that or sit down and have a roundup. Like, we're living it every day. It's the same 2 people on the job, which frees me up to not, you know, it alleviates a lot of that issue that you could have, or kind of resolving that for the next time around, because it's happening live. Everyone there is experiencing it. Sometimes I have to circle back with subs to go over, hey, this is where we are. This is what I want for next time. This is going to be our standard moving forward. But I don't have to deal with that stuff a lot. And to be honest, it's sometimes very nice to not have to be like, hey, look at this. What do we do? How can we improve? What did we mess up? Which is probably why, you know, my business, for lack of a better term, has taken the direction it has.
I think about back to our podcast with Patterson. I mean, he's got I think he talked about having 40 projects going on at once. And they were at different phases, whether it was pre-construction or it was a spec or custom. But it's like, I feel like we asked him the same question, and he alluded to the fact that he wasn't on every job every single day, but he was hitting every single job. And, contrary to what you had said in the beginning of this, he was very much, no, I put out fires all day. When there's an issue, I head right to that job and I address it immediately. Where, it seems like you've systemized that a lot here, where you're holding different people accountable in different realms. And, the one thing, and going back to what John kind of said, and I think I'm elaborating a little bit further here, it's like, does it become this, do you have to start letting, I'm going to say slip, but I don't necessarily mean that. I don't want it to be negative, but you almost have to let, if you're ramping up that quick and you're removing yourself, Loren, from these projects more and more, do you inevitably slip in quality, maybe initially, and then rework that back up? And I think that's, I'm trying to like visualize this, but I believe that if you're going to ramp up to that level and you remove yourself more and more and you hold more people accountable, you're essentially having to be okay with the fact that all of the mistakes that I made when I was running these myself, I now need to be okay with who I've hired making similar mistakes, and hopefully my job can help minimize that, but it's not going to eliminate it.
Well, I mean, that presupposes that I was doing like a
great job.
Great job from the outset. And, Tyler, like, you're definitely a better carpenter than me, and you have a deeper experience, life experience, than I do. When I came into this, I was a novice, and I did a good job for our market. And I read a lot, and I had a great mentor in my uncle, and I listened to people. It wasn't pretentious enough to think that I knew all the answers. But, I think looking back, while I thought I was doing really good work, I know now that I'm doing better and better work every day. So, I maybe was at a different starting point than you guys were. But I will say that as we've gotten bigger, we've gotten better every single year by any measure that you take, whether it be, walking through the finished work that we're doing and looking at the finished carpentry, or looking at the quality of paint, or the quality of the casework, or, even the quality of the insulation and air sealing and mechanical package. Right now we're certified passive house builders. We're in the midst of a certified passive house project. This badass I'm excited about. Like, I couldn't have done that by myself 8 or 9 years ago. And we have better carpenters. Now I get, I feel like a pretty small town compared to, the bigger cities you guys work in. We get resumes maybe once or twice a week from career carpenters who are like, hey, I've been following you guys' company for a long time, and I see the quality of work you want to do, and I'd love to be a part of what you guys do. And I was advertising on Craigslist and hiring the one person who answered that when early on. And nowadays we don't ever have to advertise. We just have quality folks there all the time, and we hire when we need to. So I agree with what you're saying, Tyler, about not needing to do the postmortems and not needing to, if you just manage one project, you're living it every single day. But I didn't start from that same knowledge base I think that you had. And the one thing about building a bigger company that's higher profile in your individual market and bringing on more qualified folks is that everyone else sees that. And a lot of those carpenters who aren't looking to run their own companies, or already run their own companies and are looking to work for someone else so they don't have to do the hustle and they can just do what they love, they want to latch onto a company that's just doing cool shit every day, and seems to be successful, and who keeps their carpenters working, 52 weeks a year or whatever. So I think there's value added in those, for us, we're doing better every year. So it's hard for me to look at that and say, I wish I was smaller and didn't have all these really highly skilled, carpenters and painters, and now we have design on board, and that's been huge. We not even talked about that, but like that was dramatically changed who we are as a company immediately.
That was supposed to be hour 3, but go ahead, you can jump ahead.
Sorry, no, but I'm going to roll that back. Just you guys cut that out whenever you.
We don't edit.
This, right?
Before we talk about design, the interesting point that I think you bring up there, and I think it's worth noting, is that you said, well, that's assuming that you were great to start with, and I sit here and it makes me wonder. It's like, for someone that wants to scale, is it better to do it sooner? That's kind of what I'm trying to unravel here, where it's like, if we had changed your path and said you didn't scale or start scaling right away, you kind of delayed it, you got really good, and then you're Tyler level carpenter, and then you start scaling, and kind of like what I had said before, it's like you have to put yourself in this mentality that, listen, I've screwed up all of these things, and now I'm going to hire people that are going to make the same mistakes that I have made, and I need to be okay with that, because it's the only way, because it's just inevitable. And I think that's for me, I think that's where I've never been Tyler's level of carpenter, but when I started scaling, I made a tremendous amount of mistakes, and it's like I'm going through not nearly as many as I did when I was alone, but it's like I'm going through some of those mistakes as we scale, and having to be okay with it. And I say okay with it in the sense that that it happens, but we're not letting it slide. It's like we're reworking it. And when it was just me, it was easy to rework. I just did it, and it wasn't necessarily money directly out of the pocket. Now I'm paying someone twice to do something.
But the question that comes up is, how do you prevent that?
And you going back to your process,
the accountability part of it, it's either you let that keep going and you're going to pay twice, or you hold somebody accountable.
Right. And it's both.
You can't not.
Well, I shouldn't say it's both. It's holding there's accountability. Like, it has to happen. There's no way you're going to prevent it from happening 100%. It's minimizing.
But what's the accountability part of it? What's the slap on the wrist? Like what's
I think you're going in, like, like you said, like the processes, like going in, whether it's a formal written process or it's a conversation, you're going in.
Do they get detention? Like, is it 1 hour? How long is it?
I think
like a yellow card.
The accountability's got to be there, but when it's just you, Tyler, not to pick on you, but you said it's just you and your dude on the site, like living every day. When you don't tell me you've never made a mistake. So when you make a mistake, what's the accountability? Like, you feel bad, you got to rework something. Maybe you missed something in the budget, and so you don't get paid for it. And maybe you're all cost plus, and so that washes. But at some point, something doesn't go right. And you either feel bad, you lay awake at night wishing you hadn't fucked that up, or something, right?
No, I mean, I fix it, but generally me fixing it is me eating labor costs. I'm not, maybe I'm paying a helper to help, but and usually that mistake is picked up pretty quickly. And then I'm also retaining that mistake. So it's not like I have a turnover, a new employee who doesn't know that mistake. It's still me kind of leading the charge every day. So those mistakes are fewer and further between because I've already made them a handful of times. So the goal is to not make them again. So I'm able to control that a lot. And I typically don't let a lot of stuff slide, or I find a way to hide it that nobody's going to know, because I kind of have a pretty good grasp on what that finish is going to look like beforehand. But that's what I run into with employees. It's, hey, I can't go through anything that we're doing and give them everything to look out for. I'll give them the big pinch points or major things, but then a lot of times it's kind of keeping a close watch on them. And if they start to make a mistake, be like, hey, just a heads up, this is what I'm looking at. This is what is going to happen if you continue to do it that way, so that they start making that mistake. But then I'm not going to let them do the entire space like that. So it minimizes it for me. But that's how my business is set up. And that's why I can have a higher profit, because I'm doing a lower volume. That's the only way that I make money. You know, that I don't want to be doing things 2 and 3 times, but if I have to do them 2 times over, I'm not straight up just paying somebody to do it.
Well, I think that, I mean, that's what the accountability looked like when it was just me. Like I had to redo it, or I had to pay an employee to redo it. And now, you know, I think that we as a company pay if something's broken or something isn't done right, like we don't make money on that project. And so I think a key piece is that
No, hold up. You don't make money.
Well,
but that employee still gets paid.
That employee
still drives home in the car, still shuts their phone off at 6 o'clock, still sleeps just fine.
They do, but there's also a huge amount of buy-in. And we do also, you know, profit sharing is a big piece of their compensation package. And it's big enough that it's really meaningful to them. And they see when we don't have profitable quarters, and we talk about, you know, why we do or don't. And I think that's a key piece. You know, I think that they've got us
they have to have a piece.
Yeah, they have to have a stake in it.
Have to.
Yeah. For a bunch of reasons other than just accountability. I think that, you know, at the end of the day, every one of my project managers could run their own construction company. They could run their own paint team or electric team, and most of them did. And they've come to this outfit because we enjoy working together. We thrive together, and we share, you know, the fruits of our labor. And we, you know, you're right that they still make their salaries, that their suffering is limited to, you know, greater than or equal to whatever they, you know, their base salary is. But
can we dig into the profit sharing? How is that structured? Because I think that's, you know,
how much money are we talking? Do I need to move?
Well, like, what's it based on? Completion,
why
speed?
Laugh?
Well, because we know you're not moving.
You're hired, man. Come on now.
Get a vintage division.
It's like, I'll paint this room tonight and I'll be out of here tomorrow.
I'm looking at that paint job though.
You like his glow in the dark stars on the ceiling?
Hey, the wife took the sand. She was sanding the deck that I did the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that a hint?
Yeah. Get her to operate that, then she can get up here and sand this off.
So the way we structure profit sharing is that you make the equivalent, and it's sort of evolved over time, but it's always been proportional to the amount of the overall payroll that you take. Now it's looking over the last 2 years, and we did that so that, like, if I hire a new person, maybe even in a management position, that they don't all of a sudden take the lion's share of profit sharing payout if we have a really good quarter, because I recognize that having a good quarter doesn't mean that everybody this quarter did a great job. It means that, you know, the estimate was great. The team, you know, we've been, you know, there's a lot of work over the last 6 to 12 months that was done to make sure that quarter went well. But at the end of the day, it's just proportional to.
So I understand, and I guess everyone understands it. If I'm making 1% of the payroll for your year, and you have $100,000 in extra, extra profit that you're going to divvy up, I get $1,000 of that at the end of the year.
That's correct. Yep.
And is it annual? Is it, you know, is it by job?
We do it quarterly. We don't do it by job, and largely because I decide and we decide as a team which job project managers get. And as you guys know, you know, your job is sort of set up for success or failure before you ever start it, in a lot of ways. And so, you know, I think a lot of projects, and you guys, it sounds like you guys all do cost plus. We've really shifted towards largely fixed price contracts. We used to be in a cost plus model, and for a variety of reasons, we just shifted away from that. So, you know, if you come into a project and the estimate's not great, you know, you're sort of stuck with that. The best you're going to do is get paid what the contract amount was setting you up for. So we just sort of look at it as a company. The whole company is making X amount of money, and frankly, we share out 50% of the profits. So that's the amount that
is
regardless if you hit your target or not.
Exactly. If we're profitable, 50% of that gets distributed to the team.
So John, before you get to your point, you know, with that being said, going back to what John was saying earlier, it's like what about the guys that aren't doing a great job? Like they're at that point, the accountability.
Their project was a loss, but the other two guys crushed.
Yeah, and now it's like, I mean, I get it, and this is where I struggle, and this is where I've had a lot of we've had a lot of conversations with like the profit sharing and bonus structure, and it's like something I'm actively working on, and it's like, and this is a really a tough thing because you're doing it company wide, which in one, in one space, it's really fair. The whole company strives if the whole company strives, but when it's you're trying to hold accountability to each individual, like what is the repercussion? Basically that, inevitably they're gonna not be with the company. Is that kind of the big picture?
It's not come to that of late, but we look at it, we're transparent. The management team, we have open book financing with the management team. We look at the numbers together, and so there's not some hidden ball. They know exactly what our sales are. They know what our profitability is. They know what the profitability on their jobs are. We try and learn from our mistakes. And that's back to earlier. Someone, asked how do people know if I'm working hard enough? I think more of the frustration is right here where people feel like, I think that project manager's not running enough projects, or I think their projects aren't profitable enough, or, I don't have an easy answer to that. I don't think we've solved that problem,
Yeah.
It almost feels like when you punish the whole team, like if someone screws up, everyone does push-ups or everyone does laps. And if the culture is correct and healthy, some of the stronger players will go and help out that other player, that younger player, that weaker player. So that way they can all see the benefit. I can understand that model. I would do that. Penalize everybody, and everyone gets a reward. Same.
I think that creates a huge amount of buy-in. And I'll tell you, like our site managers and our lead carpenters and our finish carpenters, they're the first to tell us if we have a new person who's not working out. They're like, Loren, this person is not ever going to cut it. I'm just telling you, you can hold on to them for now or not, but they're not going to be here. This is not for them. And, they see the writing on the wall. They recognize that everyone's got to contribute or they're not going to thrive. And like, I want to run a company where everybody's able to make a good living and meet their financial goals. I don't want to run a company where every one of my really good people is just desperate to get to that point where they can leave and start their own company. And if that means me making less so they can make more, so we can all sort of exist under the umbrella of the profits of this thing. And that's what I want. Cause I've fought a 1-man battle for a long time and it wasn't as much fun as fighting this 50-man battle is. Frankly.
It's like having a salary cap. Like I want to get the right players for the right salary and you got to move it around. Yeah. The question I have about the profit sharing is it phantom like shares, or like if you have a vote at the end of the year, did they buy into this, or that you just giving away shares?
There's no buying in. I'm just giving away money. They're not.
So it's a phantom shareholder. So that way, if you were to say, hey, they decide to go union, like you don't have 48 people going, yeah, we voted last week to be union, and you'd have to deal with it.
I suppose.
Oh, you're saying ownership, like
true ownership, like they bought.
No, they're just getting a portion. They're just getting
a stipend.
Yeah, it's just as a bonus,
right,
structured under a function of profitability for that.
Sure. So we went down that side of it, but you wanted to talk about design. So how recently did you bring design in house?
Before we go to design.
Before we go to design, I'm gonna turn it back over to John.
Thanks. Thanks for the mic.
Yeah, no problem.
No, one of the things I was thinking about before when we were all talking about your company's evolved to be better than what you are. And I think some of that we get stuck in even with the product. You ever have a PM or someone go, but it's so much better than what it looked like in the beginning. Yeah. That's not the case. Like the transformation isn't what you could do. It's not how much better it was from what it started from. It's what you promised. You get me? So like when you said, hey, I'm still settling, I'm happy with what we have because it's better than what I could do. You know what? I've never looked at it that way, because I've now gotten to a point where I'm selling a certain idea that has to come to fruition. So how does that work? Because I feel like that's the wrong mentality. I remember I said it decades ago to a guy. I'm like, but it looks so much better than what it started with. He goes, I don't care what it started like.
Right.
It's what it's supposed to look like. That's what matters. So how do you instill that part of it? Because then every single employee could go, well, that's still better than whatever I could have ever executed personally. So how does that, like, if you have an architect, which is going to lead into the design part of it, they create a rendering, and it like, you get me? Like, how does that work when the big picture is what the buy-in is beyond culture, beyond everything else? That's what we all struggle with is to learn to execute to that next level that's higher than what we ever could have done.
I certainly don't ever talk about like, this is better than what I ever could have done. I mean, that's not how we talk about our work. I'm just reflecting on where I came from versus.
No, true. I didn't mean to drill down on you. I made a note of it that that mentality.
But yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. That's something we wrestle with all the time. And you guys probably all have this in your own local markets as you've built a brand and people call you because they follow you on Instagram and they see your signs and they see your projects, they read about your projects and where, magazines or wherever. And when they call you, they want to see their house turn into what they read about in your magazine or that post they saw on your Instagram page. And I think that's something we've seen more and more. Like I said, clients want us to put a sign in their yard and show that we're proud of their work, and they want their project to be like a Loren Wood Builder quality project, and whatever that means in their mind. And a lot of that comes from our, heavy marketing and showcasing the work that we do. And we definitely have created this. And I assume that everyone does in their own markets. They create this standard that people who are coming to them expect for the quality of work. And we had a project like that recently. It was a really small project. It was like a garage conversion. And they didn't want to pay for a design. They just wanted us to execute. So we talked about it. We gave them a quote. We were really clear about what we were building. And I was really psyched about what we finished with. And she was like, this isn't like what I've seen on your website. And what she envisioned was different than what we executed. What we executed was what we quoted and what was in the spec sheet and what we envisioned. But she was envisioning this, $300 square foot garage loft conversion. And we were envisioning this workshop that we talked about. And so there's no question that, like, it is on us to make sure that we are communicating really, really clearly with the clients what it is that we're executing for them, and also to make sure that we're hitting the level of quality that they've come to expect, or that we lead people to expect from us. So there's never any me saying, oh yeah, this looks way better, this is good enough.
No, and I get that. It makes my mind like twitch when, like, Tyler can control almost everything he has, but yet we have to make a promise and then every day manipulate what we have for staffing, whether my finish guy gave me Lucho or gave me Johnny, and try and compensate for those things. I think that's what gets lost in the everyday struggle of creating these designs when it's not you. And when I execute today better than I could have ever executed when I was swinging a hammer, hands down. And the timing, the details, and I guess my point of this whole thing is that expectation. Like when you sell that job and then you're in the job and you're doing it. Like, I'm in the middle of it right now. We're finishing a house, and I saw Jason Artisan put this amazing staircase together, and I was like, I could do that. Told the client, I was like, we should totally do this. They're like, on board, done. And then I go to look up, I'm like, I'll go to stairparts.com. It's a spec. I'll grab these balusters. Yeah, no, they're all custom. Like, I have to have those made. Had them made, and now there's not a welder available in like this whole area because they're all slammed. And so now it's like, how do I've set that expectation with the client based on this image. It took 4 seconds to set the expectation, and it's taken me 4 months to try and assemble that team and create it within backing into that budget and the time frame I have.
Lesson learned.
So I'm not being facetious here, but imagine if you had your own architectural steel guy and you had your own staircase builder, and you knew you could execute because you could say, Nathaniel's going to come in here. He's going to knock the staircase out. He's done 15, just like what you're talking about, and Josh is going to come in here and weld up these pieces and we're going to knock it out. And they're my employees. So I know that I can allocate them to this job within the next couple of months. And
I can see how that's beneficial when everyone has multiple jobs, like painters, carpenters, and they can all blend. So that way, if you only have 4 stairs a year, you can have them kind of jump on something else. Yeah. What I get stuck on is that those lulls that happen when they're bigger projects that we've had, not a brag. It's just, there is a gap. Like for the first 2 years, we were like, we should just hire the framers. They've been framing for us for straight. I've been having that dialogue about like painting. Like we've had the same painter on my jobs for a year and a half. Like what would I save, blah, blah. But the problem is then we go through this whole finish stage. The finish stage is so much longer. So for us to keep focus on these projects, we're right now, we're putting in 5 foundations. So there'll be a massive push for foundations, for framing, for all that stuff. But then the next 7 months will be finish. It's the same as like bringing in Diego for plastering. I would never bring him in-house.
That's that's something we've not talked about. Like, how do you keep 50 people busy every day? Like, that's a challenge, but you get there. It's just like anything else. Like, scale that down. You're like, I don't know if I can hire this project manager. How can I keep him busy? But the moment you have that project manager, they're busy every single day. And part of the reason they're busy every single day is that you sell knowing that you need to keep that project manager busy. And if you had, and you don't go from 0 to 50, you go from 0 to 2 to 4. And you're, I imagine.
You seen Nick? Nick went from like 1 to 25.
Well, but I imagine that Nick is looking at a
fleet of.
Imagine Nick is looking at his backlog of work and how busy his crew is and is thinking, I need to pick up another remodel to get these guys through the winter.
Yeah.
Whereas he wouldn't be if he didn't have those guys. So I think if your market doesn't have enough work, I think a thinking person isn't going to hire more people than their market can bear. I don't know what
but you did that. You have a small market and you just hired everybody. So if they want anything done, they have to go to you.
We have a small market.
Did you grab the hardware store too?
You
can't even buy stuff. You got to go to me.
Who was that? The guy that built Sunnyside or whatever? Just own the hardware store, own the nail manufacturer.
The nail manufacturer.
I oftentimes hear all of this and I just think to myself, like, and this isn't a dig at anyone, but why? It gets to a point where like, I feel like you can't be making more money and it's just, you're bringing on more, your overhead's up and you got to take on more work.
Tyler thinks that when it comes to 2 people.
Well, you're not making 50 times more money you are now than when you were by yourself.
I've heard you say that before. And every time you say that, I wrestle with this question. And people on my own team have asked my wife, is like, why don't you just work a little bit less?
So say you were making 100 or you're making $50,000 by yourself. Like you're not making 2.5 million with 50 employees,
But what's is that the only measure of success? If it were, I could get a job somewhere else and build myself up, so if it's just like how much input for how much output, at some point you make enough money and it's no longer, money's important, don't get me wrong. And I think profitability is super important to keep a company afloat, but partly got bigger because my operation got better the bigger I got, and it got easier the bigger I got. I don't think that's true for everyone. And I think if I lived in, a different market where I could find an awesome subcontractor paint crew that executed for me every single time, I never would have bought paint in-house. And same thing with electric and maybe even finished carpentry. But I never had that avenue open to me. So
I'll send you my liability and workman's comp, Bill. And see if that scares you straight.
But
it's obnoxious.
No, but I think that most people who look to grow or look to scale, they do it because they either can't say no and they want, they want the next best thing and then the next best thing, or
Are you looking right at me? I can't
actually
tell by the camera.
I don't feel like I am. I think I'm looking at Loren, but it's not in a bad way. Or they think that, hey, this job is worth X amount, and they see that dollar sign and they're like, well, that's good money. I need to put people on that job. I need to hire them. And like, before you know it, most people have 25 people, 15 people, 10, whatever it is. They don't know their numbers. They don't understand that they're actually less profitable now than they were when they were 2 people, and they have more stress. Their quality has gone down. Like, I feel like to say that your quality has gotten better and your process has gotten better within 10 years, having 50 employees, you're probably an anomaly. I would, most people, that's not going to be the case, because they're not, that growth isn't that organic. They're not bringing people in who understand how to run that and understand how to gauge and inventory past projects, current projects, that they can then analyze that and actually have a reference point or data to go off of and increase their efficiency, lower their overhead, reduce the amount of mistakes. They're just like, it's this rat race where it's just go all the time, and they're trying to keep their head above water, and they're bringing more people in, and they need more work to keep more people busy. And before you know it, it's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm not saying that that's the way that you are, but I think that that's why most people grow. They think that it's going to be better for them. It's going to be easier. They're going to have more time off, or they're just going to make more money. And half the time it's like, I think that you need to figure out how to structure your business and make it work now, and then make a small step towards where you want to be. And then, maximize your efficiency and your team on that level, and then make another change, rather than just like, you know what, let's just grow for the sake of growing.
Yeah, I think you said a couple of things that are absolutely true. Like, growing for the sake of growing is not a good idea. I think hiring someone for a job is not a good idea. I don't think I've ever hired someone because we have this job that requires me to man up, tool up, and so I'm going to add another person. I think that seems inherently bad, because what happens when that job's over? And is that person a good fit for your team? Are they adding value to your team? And I don't disagree that our size isn't right for every other company. And I think that what you described just now does not, the type of growth you described just now does not feel like is representative of the way that my company has grown. And I think the reason that we have gotten better as we've gotten bigger is not because I hired a bunch of people under me so that I could build a bunch of more jobs and make a bunch of more money. I think the reason that we've gotten better is because as really good people came to this company and want to join the company, we brought them in, we listened to them, we gave them ownership and power, and together build a team, and so I think I got really lucky. And then my cousin, who, so really I look at this company as not just like me running a big construction company of people working under me. It's more like a cooperative of 7 or 10 people running, a bunch of small construction companies under this umbrella. I've got, my cousin could easily be working by himself. Any of my project managers could easily be working by themselves, but we have more fun and we're more effective, and we spread out the risk working together. I think
that the growth should be more proactive. I think that a lot of people's growth is reactionary, and it's reactionary to either jobs that are coming in, leads, relationships with architects, a hot economy, just having a backlog of work or being slowed down. You're like, I'm going to bring on more people to dig myself out of this hole, rather than like, hey, let's start a company, pretend that there's no work on the table. How are we going to structure that company either to be small or to be big? But I don't think that you should be growing your company based on a sequence of reactions, rather than gauging where you are and making proactive decisions before anything's happening. And I think that that's a big issue in our industry.
Yeah. And, growing is not hard. There's so much work out there, even for people who don't know anything. They can say they're a contractor and hire a couple of guys and get a job. They shouldn't. but they can, and they could hire 10 guys and get 5 jobs. Or, I think you're absolutely right that growing is easy, but growing intentionally, responsively, proactively in a direction that's going to make you more efficient and better, and hopefully more profitable is tough.
I mean, to double what Tyler said, I think, that's something that I am constantly trying to navigate, where I don't want to be reactionary. My plans for my company require a bigger workforce to what I want to be building. And,
why is that?
Why is what? Why does
A
it require, or why is that what I want?
It's required. No, it's required.
Because it's what I want. It's required based on my wants, not required to do it. It's just the way I want to structure my company. It requires more people. I want to do less projects.
Couldn't it be more qualified people?
It could be. But
you think more people is just going to solve it?
No, I mean, if we're dumbing it down to just people, no, they have to be qualified people. I want to do less projects with more dedicated teams of people that are at a very high caliber. And I believe that I need that stuff in house. I need, I need the control of what we're doing. I don't think I need to scale. Like, in my opinion, I don't foresee my company getting much larger than it is now. I think we'll always float around that 20 number based on what I would like to be doing as a company. I don't want to be fulfilling the entire carpentry workforce for what we do, but I think it's always important to have our own carpenters on staff to be the supplemental guys that are really in the details. From a project management, I want my PMs to be running one job, and that's, and handling 2 to 3 jobs at a time. For a company wide, not per person, per company, having only 2 to 3 projects running at a time.
What would it look like if you had a PM and a super on every job and didn't own any of the carpentry?
What would it look like?
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think that might not be what you want, but do you think that would be an easier path to success for you?
I do.
Like, looking at what you're doing, a lot of your I feel like if you had somebody there who was just in the details every day, there was, maybe your PM's running 3 jobs, and then you have a super who's just planted on that job every single day for every sub, answering questions. They know that job, the actual practical aspect of that job in and out, that would be far easier to manage than having multiple carpenters trying to kind of control what they're doing, and having some people have a full grasp of the job and bouncing around and everything else.
I do think it would be easier. And it's something that we talk about a lot internally, as well as like with my peers and like even the 3 of us. Right. But I don't know. It's hard for me to let go of the carpentry side of it. And, there's one side of me that thinks that or considers that maybe the carpenters, we train them into more of a superintendent role. That way the PM can step back and not be immersed in the detail. But that path hasn't been carved out yet.
Yeah, I don't know what's right and what's wrong.
I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think it's, it's truly just what you want to do. Each of us, right? John, Tyler, Loren, like myself, like we all have some sort of goal as to what we want our company to be. And it's going to be, a tremendous trial and error.
Yeah.
And, for me, I think that, I'm speaking only for myself, is that I continue to run into trial and error and try and just navigating, what works and what doesn't, and being okay with it. And I think, what we talked about before, it's like, if I was just trying to hone in on the market that I'm in right now, I'd have a lot easier time, where every time I turn around, I'm trying to change the market I'm in, trying to elevate to a different market, a higher market, more detailed, more prominent architects, whatever the case is. It's like, I'm not at a point where I can, for lack of a better word, slow down and refine. We're still navigating to where we want to end up.
Yeah, I think on your jobs and the level of execution that your customers, designers, and what you're demanding of everyone, even having one person on a job for 8 hours a day who knows that job like at the back of their hand, that's almost still not enough with all the sub trades coming through and managing them and keeping ahead of things on the scale of your jobs. But that's definitely the role that if you were looking to execute at that level, you couldn't spread that one person around. Like, they would have to be planted. And I do think that your jobs are willing to bear that cost. I don't think like Loren's jobs probably aren't able to bear the cost of having somebody like that. It would be tough to be profitable. It would be tough on the scale of my jobs to be profitable if I took the bags off and just managed. So I'm kind of doing both and overlapping. That's where I've kind of hit my sweet spot. But I feel like what people want from you and what people are hiring from you, they definitely would be willing to pay the cost of having that person planted there. And I think at the end of the day, jobs would probably be more profitable just because you'd have less mistakes. You'd have the kind of wherewithal to see problems and plan accordingly, and not having to tear things out. But if that's not the direction that you want to go, obviously that's somewhat of a non-issue or non-conversation.
Like, how hard what would it look like to almost conquer a level?
For me?
I'm more guiding it towards Nick. I feel like you're grabbing a cheat code and you're just trying to get to level 27, but yet you really didn't beat level 10 and 15, and you used the cheat code to get there. And maybe if you did get through that level, like as an apprentice, an apprentice doesn't just get to go frame an amazing staircase. They have to get through certain amount of things that prove their capability to be able to do these things. And when I hear you talk, sometimes I'm just like, man, just hang tight and hammer this out. Like we were saying, Benny and I, like, we're going to hire a new guy coming on board in a couple of weeks. And we're like, this is like, there it is again. Like this is like having your house when it's not finished, like the one I'm in right now. And when it wasn't COVID, you'd be like, you know what? The in-laws are coming over for Thanksgiving. And then you'd have this massive push to get all this stuff done in your house. Like, as having a new employee on, we've had this discussion. The whole time I'm circling this word reaction on my notebook when we're talking. And this kid's coming on board. What things do we have to have done, like this room, for that? Like, how can I use that hire as this almost ultimatum to get us certain things in that we've been trying to implement, but we absolutely have to get it in before.
So he comes in and that's already in place.
It's already in place, and it has to be in place between all parties, not like a want anymore. This is our way of using that. Where, Nick, just have you ever had that where before you hire this PM who is more qualified than your other PMs, so that way, what do I want to say here? Instead of them playing down to the caliber of the other PMs, the other people have to almost up their quality and up their capabilities, because they're going to rise to this occasion because these processes are in place. This guy's going to help run it, instead of going, all right, I have a great guy, girl, but I don't have the process in place to really maximize the utility of them. And that's where we're going to bring this person on, because growth wise, I want to pull back. And I don't want to do the numbers as much, and I really do well with the client interaction. So Benny's going to slide into that role. The only way to pull Benny into that role is to have someone on the day-to-day. And that's what we're trying to do. So I'm hoping, what I circle was, I'm hoping I'm not reacting. So this whole conversation that's been happening, I'm trying to mentally judge if I'm reacting with this hire. And I feel like I'm being proactive because we thought about it for months,
find the right person. Now we're like, all right, now that we're close, what do we want to get done?
Let me just speak to that for a second. Tyler makes a good point about not being reactionary to things like this and being proactive, but you can argue that everything's a reaction, right? You were being proactive based on
If you want to pivot the situation to look like that.
I'm just saying, like, I don't think you should get caught up as to whether or not you're being reacting to this. If your company, if you find yourself in a position where you're reacting to it, so be it. It's like you can't undo that and say, man, I wish I got to wait until I'm not reacting to it. In some sense. I mean, I think there's extremes, and I think we're using the extremes as examples. The cheat code is an interesting reference because I don't know if I've ever felt as though and I know you're not saying I'm cheating necessarily.
Yeah, it wasn't meant. Yeah,
I know that, and I know it wasn't negative, but I've never thought of it.
But
as
the pain points.
The pain point. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like you're running through a glitch or something. I don't play video games, so I can't make a good reference. But it is. It's like you're in large part. I do, and you're gonna laugh when I say this. I do feel like I'm hanging tight and I'm letting the steps go. But I know that I'm also running down the stairs as fast as I can, or up the stairs, whatever direction you want to say. But I don't think it's just the way I'm wired. I still feel as though I'm being patient and I'm taking the necessary.
What's your team think? Like that's we can
Have you ever considered medication?
I'm afraid of that. Like Adderall, you mean?
Just something to take the edge off. Maybe start drinking during the day.
What is that?
CBD gummies.
Oh, someone asked me if I took them the other day. I was like, no. They're like, you should. It takes the edge off. I'm like, I feel like I
don't have an edge.
What do you mean?
What edge?
That's exactly how I felt. What was the question? What did you just say? You just
I don't know. I think you said that you're feeling as though you're being patient, and that you're kind of letting things fall into place.
Oh, you asked what the team thought.
Not necessarily rushing it. Yeah.
Because it's not you anymore. It's going back to what we said before, is that, yeah, we're executing better than we were as carpenters. And it's, when does the company not become
I think everyone's real. I think
Loren, feel free to hop in too.
Well, just to end that.
Well, I feel like if his input would probably be valuable, being that he's the one who's closest to what Nick is going through.
Who's basically accomplished it.
No clue.
I think so. I mean, I'm thinking a lot of different things. One, everything is reactionary. I think hopefully if you're growing, it's reactionary to this need that you have in your company, and in your market, and something that you're not meeting. Like for me, it's been, we couldn't execute paint the way that we wanted to day in and day out for years. And that happened for years before we finally just brought in the one crew that had done well over and over for us. And we thought, you know what, we're going to pay whatever it takes to get you on our team. Or someone comes across someone sends a resume and I see this and I think two things. One, I don't want this person working for my competition because they're fucking good. And two, I think we might be a better outfit than we would have been without them. And so we've sort of made we are reactionary to if someone comes across our boat and they look awesome and they have skill set and life experience that's different from what we have, we've moved over and made room for them. So we're reactive in that way. I was just saying we don't hire for one job.
Well, I think reaction is one thing, but taking advantage of an opportunity and capitalizing on it is something completely different.
I think even as far as reactionary, it'd be like, okay, our company was like subsistent at a certain level, and then the economy gets super hot and you just sign up more work, and now you're trying to look to fulfill your work capacity based on all this work you took on that you weren't necessarily structured for, more so than like, hey, you know what? We want to make a small growth right now, regardless of what's going on with the economy. Let's put things into place so that when that work comes across our table, we can now handle it, rather than like signing the work and then trying to figure out how to make it happen, which I think a lot of people are doing. It's like you got to react to things, obviously, but it's more so basing what your company looks like on a plan and a proactive plan, rather than all of these outside circumstances, conditions, and things that are happening. I think that it should be a concerted effort on your end to say, hey, I think we have an opportunity to grow. How are we going to make that happen? Rather than, I just signed 6 jobs. I need labor. Who has carpenters I could borrow? Let's hire so-and-so.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. What you just described, those 2 different scenarios, one of intentional growth based on your experience of the market and your team and where you want to go. And the other one being like, these 6 opportunities came across my desk and the market's hopping right now because it's COVID and everyone's sitting at home trying to make their screen porch into a sunroom or whatever. Like, those are 2 really different scenarios. And I think anybody who's trying to run a business had better be taking the long view and not hiring just for a specific moment in time or for a job that comes across their desk. And I feel like growing up in a manufacturing family, that was something I was aware of, was that if you want to take on a new product line, you're going to have to tool up for that line and hire a whole new group of people. And if that product falls off, then all of a sudden you're screwed. And so like I've always sort of had that in the back of my mind, like what's my fallback position if I hire these people? Can this market handle that? Is just this little bump in activity is that all that's going to sustain this? But back to like the question of whether you jumped like some sort of, skip some stages in the game. Like, I don't know the history of your company, but I like, as you were saying that, Johnny, I was thinking about like local companies that I do know, and some of them have grown really fast, within a couple of years to doing badass projects and big projects and quality projects. And some of them have chugged along, I don't say any names because I don't know how many people listen to this podcast, but there are other companies who
Nobody, you can do it. It's like 5 people.
I'm not buying it. I'm not saying any names. There are other people in our market who do fantastic work, who I've looked up to for 20 years, who have never grown beyond a one-man band. They like what they do. They're doing the exact type of projects they want to do. And I think everybody just picks their poison, man. I think different people have I think some people can jump in year 2 if they've got good carpenters and a good team and they know what the heck they're doing. They can execute a lot of the parts of a really good project, a really big project. Well, I know that there are limitations, and I've certainly learned from my mistakes. But I don't see like how growing to 20 people in some number of years and wanting to do some bigger projects or some higher level projects or some higher finish level or higher cost per square foot or however you quantify that. It doesn't seem like it's skipping levels. It's just picking your poison.
You ever meet a guy that wants to frame for you and you're like, yeah, he's like, I got 10 guys, I can do whatever. Then you ask to see his last stuff and he shows you a shed. And it's like, you know what? That's cool. That's great that you do that. But so you have 15 guys working on a shed. It's just, how do you evaluate like what it is that having a lot of people and giving you the qualifications to then execute at a level? I mean, I have to deal with it all the time where certain subs come to you and they, through social media, I've got one guy right now who DMs me every single day. And he's like, come look at one of my jobs, blah, blah. So I'm having John go do it. But it's like, I hate the fact that the number of employees is have any weight to what you can execute.
Yeah, as far as credibility goes.
Yeah, it doesn't hold anything.
I think that it's tough in this market right now because anyone can stay busy.
Yeah,
and
people can't fail right now.
And anyone can grow. And there's a place for everyone right now where when things tighten up, the goal for you, Loren, would be if the economy started to kind of trip or hesitate a little, that you'd be able to sustain the work and the amount of employees and keep moving forward until you can get back on your feet, rather than like you're not running the type of company where things slow down. You're like, all right, everyone's getting laid off and I'm going to, dig my heels in and I'll continue to live the lifestyle that I can. At least it doesn't appear that way.
Well, there's a lot of things that, I'd like to think that there's a lot of things that we've done that have kept the team together. One thing is I've never laid a person off ever in the entire, last 10 years of this company. I've fired some people, but I've never laid anybody off. And we've made a commitment that everybody who works for us has the opportunity for 40 hours a week, every single week. And that puts us in a little different position than a lot of my competitors in town who go project to project and lay people off in the wintertime and go on vacation or whatever. So it's a choice I've made. But I forget what I'm responding to right there, but on the, I think, yeah, too many things going on. I missed, Johnny, you were saying something a second ago.
It was
about the number of employees that a sub has.
Yeah, right. So that, I think you said.
I thought you got triggered when we said, hey, everyone has a spot and no one can fail right now. I watched you want to jump in.
I do have people coming to me all, hitting us up on Instagram or texting me saying, hey, I'd like to do tile for you. Here's my experience. And we certainly have had framing crews come in who we would never talk to, but you also see people who come into the market and after 2 years, they're doing beautiful work and they were faking it until they made it and they were successful at that. So different people grow at different rates.
It depends on what your expectation you're setting. This goes back to the conversation we had with Aaron last week. Certain companies have the ability to have like this whole education training for their employees and how you execute and how you do this stuff. Other people are just getting extremely lucky because the last 11 years have been phenomenal for growth. That I've watched so many people. We basically joke and say anyone with a pickup truck right now is a developer and a custom builder, because the word custom and luxury get overused and no one knows any better on what it is. So how do we educate? I literally thought of a video today where I'm like, I'm going to do a video where I drive around and show all these luxury homes and then show what one of ours is, and not throw anybody on the bus, but I just drive around and see all this crap going up. And yeah, it's serving a purpose. It absolutely is. But it's just, how do we, if you have the ability, to have a tile guy that is coming on board and you personally have the time to then mentor them through that process to become a great tile setter and mechanic on your projects. And then that's how you've gained value in that relationship. So now this guy's or girl's never going to leave you because of the asset you've given them in knowledge and craftsmanship and how to do this and how to teach them how to, hey, here's my budget. It's going to work our way into, in 3 years, they're an amazing tile setter. That's unbelievable. And kudos to you. But I don't think that's what happens on a daily basis. Most of the time is you give them a shot and then you circle around, you don't, hypercycle over them. And then either you get lucky or you lower your expectations on what the execution was supposed to be. And that's the difference between Tyler and most people, is that every time I got the phone with him, I'm always like, man, I'm not doing it right still. Like, it's just, he has it at such a high level. And then I walk into a job and I look at 5 things. Like right now I'm looking at a couple nails that I double shot in my trim. And it's like that like, how do I, you get me? I'm not knocking you. I'm 100% with you. It's just, this is like the time I brought on a carpenter from North Bennett Street School. And I was like, all right, I know I can't do what Nick's doing, where he's able to have guys where lead carpenters, apprentices, and mentor them and give them the opportunity in a great project. But I have great subs that I can then connect them with and give them almost a jack of all trades, meaning hang out with the trim guys, learn how to do the stairs, and then hang out with the paint guys. So then you know what they're having to fix, and vice versa. And then it didn't go anywhere. It lasted like 2 months and the kid was in a closet with a headlamp on doing baseboard. It's
an apprenticeship model. There's no question that you've got to put in the years and the time swinging a hammer or doing whatever your scope of work is till you can get really good at it. But as you're talking, and I was thinking about just like how fast you grow to the next level. I was just thinking about like, so I was thinking about like a sports analogy. So I've been a climber my whole life. That's been my big passion. And when I started climbing, 20 some years ago, there was another climber who, we were both doing the same type of traditional climbing. And he was like, he's sort of pissed him off that I was progressing at a certain level. And he's like, no, man, you need to follow other people and you need to remove their gear and you need to watch how they're placing gear before you ever, skip 5'9" and climb 5'10". And, and he was really offended by this idea that there are different people that are progressing at a different level because either they had a different risk tolerance level or they're just better climbers. And like, that's what I hear you saying right now is that you've got to put in your time, like pulling someone else's gear and watching how they, attack something before they can ever place their own gear.
I think it all depends. I mean, what you're describing is a talent oriented type of activity. When you were saying that, I'm thinking on Tyler's end of it, where tattooing, like, yeah, you could jump into it. You're permanently putting something on someone's body that if you screw up, you don't live with it, but someone else does. And the accountability is the shop that they're under. And again, I'm not a tattoo guy, so Tyler, jump in here, but I've watched enough of the Ink Masters and all that stuff where, yeah, your ambition can be bigger than what your capabilities are. And at some point, someone with the authority or the knowledge or that is a craftsman is the one that should be able to say to you, hey, so without ego, not like the climber that's like, hey, no, I put in my due, so you just have to do this. It's like, I was hoping you're going to say, there was this amazing ledge that I wanted to climb, but it was a number of years before it was foolish for the first 1 to 6 years for me to even attempt that. But from 6 to 7, that was when I needed to do it. My body needed to do it. And I need to get over this hump that was anxiety. And
well, that's true too. But there's also, and I see the same thing in construction, and it's definitely ego driven. There's like, you need to put in your time before you can, and I don't even know if this is worth arguing and spending any more time on, but only that different people progress to different levels, both as carpenters and as project managers and as company leaders, based on their own, not just their own particular skill set, but the skill set of their team and their subcontractors.
100%. You rise to people that are more skilled around you. It's like in hockey, you play a team that's awful. It's up to your team to excel to the level that they always play at, or do they drop to play at this level B or C for that team? So I guess it's just, we're not arguing. I'm trying to figure out is, before when I entered this trade or this industry, there was a hierarchy, but there was a level, like you almost knew what level you're getting to, meaning I knew I had to pick up a certain amount of things before I touch a table saw, before I, got the roof or start roofing. I would always be the guy finishing before I started, because you don't want to screw up the tabs and all that stuff. Or, you get me, there was certain things that I knew I wanted to look over someone's shoulder before I tried to execute that, just to understand the process. It was never written. It's probably why I don't love written processes, because I'm more of a visual guy that's like, all right, I just need to lead better for someone to pick up on it. And it's the same, not just my employees, but also subcontractor. I need to have all the right things in place for them to excel at their maximum. If I'm not there, like have all the lumber drops, all that stuff. And I know, and I fail a lot. I do. Like right now we're backfilling a foundation right now. And I had teed up lumber I'm like, hey, lumber should be there Friday and Monday. And that was before we had the town of change where we could get an as-built and submit that between backfill and the first floor deck going on. They're like, nope, it's got to be submitted before you do waterproofing. So, but the problem is my PM thought that I still wanted lumber there. It's like, no, it's still not ready. You still need to be the guy that goes, I'm the guy on the ground going, no, that's probably not right. I'm going to pull the plug on that. Not go, oh, the higher ups. That's what he told the site guy. Higher ups want it here. That's what the site guy told me. And I'm like, he's like, are you the higher up? I'm like, there's no one above me. So yeah, I guess that's me. But I'm like, the reality of it is that you have the control over it. I was just setting the expectation, but you have to think on your feet. I don't know where we went.
No, I think that everyone can learn and grow at a different rate too. But I think that you're, as that person, and if you're around somebody who's growing, that you can't move, you shouldn't be moving to that next step until you have what's in front of you handled.
like dialed in.
Yeah, and like that growth and everything else, like for the climbing example, that guy shouldn't be telling you, hey, you need to do this, this, and this just for the sake of telling you need to put your time in. If you're capable and you have the techniques and the skill and the strength to handle that, you should, let the leash out, go for it. But you can't be skipping 2 steps without ensuring that you're ready to go and that you understand that, especially when it comes to working in somebody else's home, or they're hiring a professional, an expected professional, to be able to handle what they're doing.
I agree with you, but to a point, I think that people can grow, and you can, just like with climbing or with any other sport, or even in school or whatever analogy, like your only growth only happens when you're pushing your comfort level. Like if you just do exactly what you execute really well every day, you're not growing. You're just going to work and swinging your hammer or doing whatever's in your comfort zone. You're not taking any risks. You're not pushing yourself. You're not pushing your team, and that's a comfortable place. And that was what I was getting at earlier. There's other people in my market who have been doing the exact same type of work for 30 years, and they're freaking happy. They're getting paid. They're doing their work. I don't think they're pushing themselves. Like for me, I wouldn't be content doing that. So maybe that's part of why I am where I am, or why I run the company I do, is because I want to see growth, not like growth in size, but like growth in terms of progress in life, and like getting better at something and trying something. And that's same in climbing and in building and in like tattooing or whatever. And if you're not taking risks, you're not growing. And so you're right though. You made a point, like you're in building, you're taking risks on other people's homes. So I guess those had better be pretty freaking calculated risks, and making sure.
If you fall and die, that's on you.
Yeah,
it is. It really is. But you got kids and a wife, and maybe you better like control your risk. And same thing when you're building, like you better not be sticking your neck out so far that you can't afford to fix your mistakes.
Yeah.
So control your risk. But I still think that different people are willing to stick their necks out a little further. And some of those people grow because they don't fall. They continue to have those successes for whatever reason, because they're a good builder, or because they're, they don't drop balls. Like they have a great team that's underneath of them, helping them not drop balls.
I don't know. I feel like nowadays there's enough work pouring in that is always that net of safety, because there's another deposit. There's something else coming along the line. I just grew up always with people surrounding me that have been in the industry for 40, 50 years, that the amount of knowledge, the way they spoke, the way that they handle themselves, the way that no one was ever freaking out. Anytime anything ever came up, it was like when your daughter or your son falls on like the asphalt, and they look up at you, and you're just like, the first kid's like, oh my God. And the kid starts crying. And the second kid, you're like, yeah, you're fine. And then the kid's like, yeah, I'm fine. And it's like that. I never grew up thinking I knew enough. But now everyone grows up going, I don't need to know shit. I'll figure it out. And that doesn't help our industry with craftsmanship and what we're trying to raise. Rising tide raises all boats. It's like, no, everyone just get in the water. We'll just figure it out when we're out there with no life preservers, no dragnet, no safety, not knowing how much fuel's in the tank, anything.
And I'm not promoting any of that. I mean, I think, like I said at the beginning, like we do a post-mortem on every job, and we look at our relative success and failure. And I say to every employee that we interview in our team, just if we get a job done and everything looks great and it's executed really well, like that's a bare minimum. Like that's going to happen, period. Because we'll go back and work over and over.
It's a gimme.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part is making sure that the client is happy with the process, that every time they don't understand something, you're there clarifying it for them, that your employees are, well set up to be successful. Like all that stuff's the hard stuff, like making sure that the job looks good in the end. That's easy because you're not going to leave until that's done.
They got Photoshop anyways.
I think
it's like level 50, 51.
I think that's what separates a really quality and enduring builder to the guys that are out there right now, just executing while the market's good, is that they hold themselves to the same level of success regardless of how much work there is out there. I lose sleep for weeks if something doesn't go well on a job, not because I'm worried about not making money on that job, but because I feel like a failure and I don't want to fail,
I think that that's a big difference there, that you didn't say that you're growing your company to make more money. You're growing it for other reasons or because your work's better. And I think that's the same thing. You're not just leaving a job good enough because that's what's going to get you paid. And I think, unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case for most of our industry, which is probably something, that we've been running into and have ran into for a long time. And again, even with the size of your company, I would say that you're an exception to, a lot of people. I don't feel like run as efficiently as they grow. It's like, all right, let's grow some. That's not working. How are we going to change this? And it's not a consistent, organic, kind of calculated growth. And it's refreshing to see that you're able to do that. And I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with bringing in people, with the experience, whether it was your cousin, your uncle. Like, I was going to ask you, even like the post-mortem on your jobs, when was that policy adopted? Was it once you hit a certain scale, or was that somebody you brought in who was like, hey, we need to do this on every job? Because it's so easy to get done a job right and be like, nothing I can do about it now. Let's just move forward. Why are we going to go back and inventory this entire job and see where we stood with it?
I mean, just to answer that question, I think that's been there from the outset. When it was just me, early on, I was learning so much, because it was a new industry for me. And I was reading everything I could get my hands on, and I had some experience, but not nearly enough. And I was making mistakes every day, and I was laying awake every night, like, worrying about failure across the board. And the only way I coped with that emotionally was by keeping lists of like things. It's called, like, I still have it. It's a Google Doc somewhere called mistakes I'm never going to make again. And I just felt like if I wrote this down, maybe it would stick, And so
I love you. Like, just between like the post-mortem, you could call it anything, like a debrief, like a closeout, and then just,
I feel like mistakes, if they hurt bad enough, they're difficult to forget.
Like every once in a while, like maybe 5 times the last 5 years, I've gone back and looked at that sheet, and I'm glad I wrote that shit down. But I think in just writing it down, it helped me just.
I agree with that. Like, even if you don't reflect back to it, I certainly don't have a Google Doc, but I feel like I make a list of stuff that bothers me.
Yeah.
And when I write it out, especially if I write it out like with pen and paper, it sticks. Where it's like I might never look at that list again, but the fact that I wrote it out, it made me actually think through step by step or line by line of what those things were and how they impacted way more in depth than if I just was like, yeah, I made that mistake, I got over it.
do you guys make a list of the successes?
Nope.
No. I think that I'll turn to get stuff off of my chest if there's an issue, whether it's the end of the day or something I need to fix. I can very easily get super consumed with that bothering me, and that can, I won't snap out of that all night until I get to the job tomorrow. And it's not necessarily writing it down like you did, Loren, but just like having that conversation with somebody. Hey, here's the issue. Here's the mistake. This is what I'm going to do to fix it. At that point, it's like, okay, it's all out in the open. That's it for tonight. I'll figure it out tomorrow. But at this point, like, it's been noted. It's been documented. I spoke to somebody about it. Everything's going to be okay. I can sort it out tomorrow. And that's kind of my coping mechanism for dealing with that stuff, rather than like internalizing it and sitting there all night like, I gotta fix this went wrong, why did this go wrong? I could try and figure out a reason why it went wrong and tell the customers that, or I could just be like, hey, listen, this is what happened, this is what I'm going to do to fix it, which helps me a lot.
Yeah, I gotta assume that you guys lay awake in bed every once in a while because of a project timeline.
Every once in a while.
What are you talking about?
I mean, you guys never talk about this, but for me, like that's the toughest part of my life is like those times when I'm really, when I'm just stressed out and I can't sleep. So for me, if I get up and I put it down, like now I don't fill out a spreadsheet. I just send an email, or I send myself a note, or I just, problem solve through it a little bit. Think about what's worst case scenario. If that worst case scenario comes to fruition, how am I going to address it? And then I've thought through it, and then I can go back to bed and hopefully put it out of my head until the light of the day when everything looks better anyways.
Hopefully the worst case scenario wasn't too scary.
Yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario almost never happens, but that's at least what I worry about, just because I'm a worrier.
It's not a good industry to be in as a worrier or having anxiety or everything else, because there's so much that's at stake, and there's so much up in the air and so many moving parts at any given time that, I know that the lack of control gives me anxiety, and that's why I want control. So like, if you have anxiety and having a company that's bigger and letting that control go and not checking in with customers and not making sure everything, you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, it can be debilitating.
That's true. But I think that, for me, I think back, like when I first started this, I remember I just had anxiety all the time. And I asked my uncle, I was like, how do you even sleep at night? Like, there's so much stuff that's wrong. And
this pills.
And he said, well, I've had a lot of problems, and I've never come across a problem that we didn't fix and move past. So I just don't worry about it. I just figure, here's a problem, and we're going to find the solution, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to move past it. And 10 years down the road, that's what I've seen. I don't look back. There's not been one problem that we didn't come to some sort of resolution around and then move on. And so I've really adopted that.
I mean, that's just confidence and experience, though, because no matter how much somebody tells you that, when you first go into yourself, you don't have the confidence, you don't have the experience. I remember going into jobs when I first started, and I would basically try and plan that job out from A to Z. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to demo it, and then the studs are going to look like this, and almost foresee what was going to be behind the wall, and try and, like, I wish I could see in here and cut a hole in here to see what's going on so that I could plan what my tile layout's going to be like. And then the more you do it and you pull stuff apart and you see an issue and then you fix the issue, that you just realize that's just part of this game, that you're not going to have every answer, and that you're going to have the ability, you're going to have the team, you're going to have the confidence and the wherewithal to get from A to Z without having A to Z completely mapped out for you. Like, you may have A and you may have Z, but you don't need everything between there to finish that job, because all those letters in between there are all going to flip-flop, and they're going to switch, and what you think was there isn't going to be what's there. And that's just, the more you do it and the more experience you have there, it's going to be so much easier. The anxiety is going to lessen. And sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. Like, I sometimes wish I was still a little bit more on my toes, because I go into something saying, hey, we can figure it out. And then I make a stupid mistake that I shouldn't have. Had I gone into it with a little bit more anxiety, I probably would have been a bit more prudent going towards there.
Yeah. And I think, that's the value of anxiety, is that it acknowledges that you care. If you're a new builder and you're out there, whether you've got a bunch of carpentry experience or not, if you're a new GC and you're running a company, you don't have any anxiety, like, I think there's a problem there. I think you've got a lot.
It's because you don't know what you don't know.
No,
dude, when I was my wife made me get on anxiety medication after we had our first kid. And
that was like my first project.
I seriously was like, listen, I don't want to get too high of a dosage, because I still want to have my anxiety, because I feel like it makes me create better work. Like, I feel like if I'm on edge, I'm not going to let stuff slip. I don't want to be zonked out like a zombie and my work to suffer. And she's like, legitimately ready to divorce me if I don't get better. And I'm like concerned that my work's going to take a hit. But I don't want our home life and my child's life to be better. I just don't want my work to suffer.
Right.
But I do think that, as you, like, to your point, as you get more skilled, like, now you come into a remodel, like, you don't worry about, like, the order of operations. You're not like keeping that all in your head, because what follows. You put in protection, and then the demo happens and you got some rough in and you're looking for, so now you sort of zero in on the long lead time items. You're like, I got to order windows because that's at least 6 weeks, and I've got to get the cabinetry laid out. And, I think there might be a beam in here. We're going to go ahead and cut into the drywall and figure that out. And you're like zero in on what the problems are. And I think that's what experience brings you, is there's still problems, but you just don't have to problem solve all the little stuff that you already problem solved 100 times.
But if you're, okay, perfect point. But if you're always making those jumps instead of going level 1 to jump to level 3, if you're going 3 to 10 to 20, if that always happens, the process you just wrote won't make any sense for the next job. And then it's like you want to, I want to accomplish stuff where I want to get so fluid at it that it's like breathing. We don't think about it. We just do it. It's like drive. When you first started driving, it was like, you always anxious. You always like, now it's like, there's times where I don't even know how I got home.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just have no idea. Like
I feel like I didn't just look at the road for 2 minutes.
Right?
But I swear I was looking at the road the whole time, but I'm just like somewhere else. Like, I didn't blink for the past 3 lights.
Seriously.
To use that analogy though, I grew up driving a stick. I was talking to my dad. I was like, I didn't drive a manual or automatic transmission until I was in my 20s. And I don't even know if you can get a manual transmission, but that's how I feel about building. That's why I've got a big company, because I want to do it all. I want our team to do it. But nowadays, or maybe it's always been the case, but it seems to me locally, like most of my competition, they're not driving. They've got a fucking chauffeur that's driving them around in a Cadillac, It's a bunch of subcontractors.
I'm in the wrong market again.
They get, you cherry pick the good subs. And if they're willing to come work for you, if you got enough money to where you can cover that project and they feel pretty confident that they're going to get paid, they do the problem solving. They know the steps, and you outsource that risk, and you outsource the quality control. And like, that's the competition.
But it's not your product at that point. It's not your product and it's not your project.
Exactly. But that's like, for me, and I don't mean to knock my competition here locally, because there's a bunch of builders that I really admire, but most of them are just like a one guy and his son, or a guy and his two carpenters. They never scale. They only do 1, 2, 3 projects a year. And there's just more work that can ever get done. And then there's these other really big builders who are just, GCs, and they sub out absolutely everything, and they execute pretty quality work, but it's everyone else's quality, not theirs, to your point. And that's like, I don't want to do either of those things. I want to be big enough where when someone calls me, I don't say, I've got a 3-year wait list, get in line. I say, yeah, man, we can help you. We got, we're several months booked out, and we might be able to start working on the design in a month or 2, but definitely want to work with you. And then when we do get in there, that we're the ones doing the work, that whether or not I'm the project manager, I'm the one they're talking to every day, but it's our team and our level of quality and our quality control and our process that, that's driving that project.
I think that's what Nick wants with his company ultimately.
What's that?
Right? Like to have basically
he blacked out.
No, but to have like your team in there, so it's not, you're not just
right.
subbing everything, that it's your quality control, it's your team, it's your staff, but still being able to get to customers within a reasonable amount of time. To have a big enough company that you can handle the workload, have your team on staff, but not have to sub everything out.
Yeah, and that's, and we've talked like dollar value before, and like I've dabbled with like what I think our price point or total job cost value will be. And that's why it's like, I don't necessarily want to do the most expensive of them or $10, $20 million projects, because I don't want it to be this life suck of the company for 2, 3, 4 years, where it's like, I'd rather do, I keep using the $8 million figure. I don't know where it came from, but I feel like that is between like the $1 million and $8 million are projects that would allow us to have the dedication that we need, that are 12 to 24 months long, and we're operating with our core team to facilitate it. And yeah, I think you're right, Tyler. It's like, I do want to get to them in a reasonable amount of time. Yes, I want to be planning for projects 2 years in advance, but that doesn't mean that they're waiting 2 years. It's that we're spending, an exorbitant amount of time through design and really building, like really taking the time necessary to design something really great. So when we are in construction, it's far, in my opinion, it would be more efficient.
Like, what's your realistic time frame for an $8 million project to come in your lap? Like, realistically,
I
that
don't
you could
know.
execute.
I don't know. I don't have that.
Like,
answer.
if it came to you tomorrow, would you say yes?
Yes.
Obviously, why do you ask dumb questions?
Because the answer should have been no, because I don't have the
Maybe.
right people in place. And
Maybe, but just
okay, if I could slap you, I would.
that's fine.
Like,
I would
think about it a little bit. Just take a minute and pause.
But I said
you didn't even
yes.
pause. You didn't even pause.
No, I didn't.
Just think.
What's the worst that's going to happen?
Here, the worst is going to happen.
Fucking
Nick.
foolish millennial.
I'm not a millennial. I don't think.
Stop acting like one.
You're going to be tied up on that job for 8 years. You're going to say no to every single other job that comes along. You're going to tool up and hire 10 other people so that you can execute that job well. I mean, I don't really know that's what
Then you'll
happened.
be in a lawsuit for the next 10 years.
That's the worst that's going to happen. Right? Is that what we're getting at? Like that?
No, I don't know.
bad.
Oh well. Like, I have to, like, there's a risk, right? Like, what's the chances of the worst case scenario unfolding?
Just you don't execute
I think
the way
that
you're
it's
supposed to.
leaning more
in the rep.
towards worse than the opposite side of the spectrum.
I was on a project years ago where I left everyone to finish it. Really cool product, was amazing, huge budget. And I talked to people after that and they said, this could have been the coolest project in Wellesley. Instead, it was a laughing stock of that area for that level of project.
Sure.
That is my biggest fear, is that
That's a realistic fear. And I would have that same fear going into it.
I mean,
But-
that's personally just the liability and
Sure.
the aggravation and the drama that could happen.
But if I'm
not qualified,
if I'm approached with an $8 million job and they said we're ready to start construction tomorrow, no, of course I'm not going to say yes to it. But
Friday, maybe.
Next Friday, okay.
I could do
no,
Tuesday.
but if it's a real,
I don't start products on Wednesday.
if it's a realistic time frame where it's like, hey, this is a project, it's an $8 million budget,
You're like, it'll take me 8 years to ramp up because my people will be ready then.
we want, we're going to start design, we want to bring you in early, I would say yes at the
Why
early
the-
design and build it alongside that design. Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm a millennial. I'm confident that if I was approached with it, I would figure it out and make it happen.
What's the dollar? Like, why does the dollar amount?
The dollar amount doesn't
Like,
matter,
why
and
is
it's
$8 million job better than a $1 million job. Like, to me, it's not. Like, I would much rather
because
do eight
in-
$1 million jobs than one $8 million job. Because
Loren, that's a perfectly fair argument. The reason I came up with the $8 million originally, and this was stemmed from a conversation I had with my coach, is based on what I want to build. And it's like the scale of home, the level of execution, the likely square footage of it, the likely price per square foot. And it worked out to where it's about an $8 million house. And that's where that came from. And we started talking, in this conversation, it was basically like now I sound like John, but it was, we were trying to put together this 36-month projection of like what I want my company to be in 3
Does he make a
years.
percentage off of what your company does for revenue?
No.
Joking.
That'd be smart.
that's fair. I mean,
But-
that's
And that's where it started. And we started talking about what about 10, 12, 15, 20, and these larger projects. And, I was approached with one that was in the realm of that. And it was a conversation that didn't go anywhere. We didn't end up even seeing the job. But at the time, I'm like, I don't know if I feel as though we're getting into the realm of light commercial, and it becomes, again, a life suck out of the company where, just to me, again, millennial, foolish, whatever, slappable, it's 8 million, sounds like a project that, yes, we would need to restructure and set up for that, but it seems far more obtainable and something that wouldn't be as high risk as something much larger.
So with
Given that goal, I'm with Johnny that maybe like working up to it rather than, because what I just heard you said is, yeah, we'd have to tool up for it. Like, I don't think you'd want to get there. I don't think you want to get to being ready for that job by tooling up for that job. I think you want to get ready to that job by building that team that's poised to like execute that job with the
100%. These are the steps I'm taking. It's
but Nick's gonna figure out his growth is from design until execution of that job. That's enough of a
I'm not saying that's not how I want to approach it. I'm trying to do that now every single day, take the steps necessary. But if it landed on my lap,
we all know that would be like, all right, we're signing an $8 billion job. I'm gonna basically restructure my business and team and get enough people in place to handle this, and I'll have it sorted out by the time we're done design. So that's
that might happen.
Growth is like,
I think
we're gonna have a whole podcast dedicated to it.
I think
so everyone can help me.
I think that the problem, I don't know about, I can't speak to
I want to know what John's writing right now.
I can't speak to your team, Nick, but Johnny said earlier on in the podcast today, he said, like, I don't know how I'd keep that many people busy because I got 5 foundations going to the ground and no one's framing right now. We're just digging holes and pouring concrete. And then in 5, however many months we're going to be finishing. I've got 52 people that have to work every single day. I've got to have jobs in every different phase of construction. I've got to have small enough jobs they fit in the cracks. Like, I feel like, ironically, by having a much bigger team, I'm limited to, out of necessity, taking much smaller jobs so that I can fill in those cracks. And so there's always manpower to send my people to. And I feel like for me anyway, I don't know, Nick, if this is true for you, but as I've grown my team, I feel like I heard you say this the other day, that you had a kitchen remodel fall through or something. And was that you or was that someone else sometimes I can't tell people's voices when I'm listening on the podcast, but just that you were worried that it was, that you had an opening in your schedule. Like that's what I dread, is just having an opening in my schedule. And so I don't want an $8 million job because I don't want to have to dedicate so much of my team to that one job where I'm not able to execute a bunch of different jobs in a bunch of different phases at a time. And I feel like almost someone without very many employees is way better positioned to take a huge job because you don't have to tool up. You just bring in more subcontractors, sub out the risk. And, I think when I look at the big contractors around here who are doing the much larger residential projects, most of them are very small teams and they just lean on more subs and there's no risk. They're just subbing out that risk. But for me, I have enough people that I can't afford to take on those big projects.
And I think that makes sense, and that's the case. It's not that you couldn't, your company couldn't handle that workload. You could, but now you're putting all of your eggs in one basket, and then your other jobs are getting dragged out, and then the structure that you've created with your business and the growth that you've created for 10 years is now basically a wrench is getting thrown in that, and now you're completely restructuring it for one job that, if you're not used to running that type of job, may not be a profitable job at all for you. So now 75% of your company is not profitable, and you have 25% doing what you're good at, doing what makes you money, which doesn't really make sense. So that $8 million project, which looks like, that's big money, that's going to be amazing. Worst case scenario, I could sub all of it out. But like, if you are not fit to be doing that, you're kind of playing with fire.
No doubt. And I think about it like exactly like that. I think about my jobs like a investment portfolio, and I want to be diversified. And sure, I want some concentrated risks. I've got some bigger jobs, but I want a bunch of small jobs too. And frankly, I look at a new construction job and the profit contribution that job's going to bring me over the course of a year. I look at 4 or 5 kitchen remodels, way easier to make that same amount of money with a handful of kitchen remodels. I still want to do those new construction jobs because I'm egotistical and I want to have something, fancy to show people or whatever. But at the end of the day, like those smaller jobs oftentimes are more profitable, and it's easier to control your risk on those jobs. So the bigger the jobs get, the bigger
it's the same thing. I'm not doing this to find the easier way to make more money.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting you were, but
I know.
In fact, like earlier on, like 5 years ago, however many years ago, like I just wanted to build badass stuff. Now, like 10 years in, I kind of just want to make sure we're profitable every year. Like I'm done building my portfolio. I don't ever want to take a job and be like, wow, it'll be a good one for the portfolio. I just want to fucking make money so that we're still alive next year and we're still alive 3 years.
It's crazy. Like we're doing one in Cohasset right now. And we killed the last fireplace that we did in Dover. Like I was so proud of it, loved it. And I've said to these guys, like I sent a picture and I'm like, it's killer. And they're like, yeah, it's awesome. I'm like, and it's better than Dover. Like, and like you always, and it's nothing against that last project. It's just,
You're constantly refining.
yeah, you're trying to make things work. And I can't tell you how many times, even with all the subs and designers, that there's pushback to execute this certain vision. And that's part of the awesomeness that we try and create, is that like you have to see through the lines. Like for instance, the Lego wall. The Lego wall in concept wasn't my idea. It was the interior designer came up with this Lego wall that was just sheets on it. And I was like, all right, I think it's my job to either create an unbelievable blank canvas for them to then, populate with cool stuff, whether it's, decor. But if I can help incorporate architectural details and cool other factors, I wanted you to walk up those stairs and you would never have caught that Lego wall because it's not facing you. And I wanted to draw you into that. So that's why we created the Lego wall from the corner. But it's the same thing. It's like, how do you ramp up a design? How do you get it and give it some soul and some personality? Or is it just going from A to B to C to D? And I think, Nick, one of the questions I had for you real quick was, when you're talking to that coach and you're talking about these goals of 8 million, 5 million, like, was there talk prior to that of how well things are going on the $800,000 renovation and the $1 million renovation? Because I feel like I've had discussions with coaches and there's so much, I want to say pre-con on how well the team's working. Like you're all doing the testing and all that stuff, because in my opinion, the $8 million product shouldn't even come up at this point, because like for me, I wouldn't even take it on myself, because my sub pool that I have right now, I wouldn't want like Diego to have to plaster that, because he would have to put all his guys on that for the next whatever months. It just, there's certain things that I just know we're not capable of doing, that not that I can't ramp up to that, but to the point is that I don't want to. I want like just.
Well, I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, do you like, you don't want to.
No, does
my entire coaching is not based around that.
No, I wanted to say your entire bubble, everything that you have right now is shaped around one thing, to execute kitchens and that stuff. And until you perfect that, I wouldn't move beyond that until I know I can minimize my risk instead of maximizing my faults by magnifying the project size. And that's not directed to you. That's how I think about it.
I feel like those could be like lyrics to a song.
I think that was a really acute way of stating the risk there of scaling, right? Like magnifying your mistakes, like from $800,000 job to $8 million job. But I do, not to speak out both sides of my mouth, but like I sort of, like Johnny, you're saying you don't want to do a job that big, and Nick, you're saying you do. Like, I think we all just do what we want to do, right? I mean, we
100%.
Yeah, I think the goal for all of us is to kind of be that sounding board, but also to be like, yeah, but do you really want to do that? Like, have you really thought that through? Because it's just like, when you have the job that goes well, you don't learn that much from it. It's not until you question, or somebody questions what you're doing, that you really start digging into, well, what would I need to put in place, or what would need to change, or what would be a better stepping stone towards getting to that job that you might not even consider until somebody's like, hey, maybe that's not the timing for it.
That's a really good point. And, you don't learn if you don't make mistakes, or you don't see those mistakes, or you don't stop and recognize the mistakes and think about how you're going to solve them. But some people, maybe they don't make those mistakes at a certain level. They've got to push it to the next level before they see those. For me, like I think early on, the first 3 to 5 years of my career, I wanted to build houses. I just wanted to build new houses. I wanted people to hire me to build custom houses. I was psyched about like doing bigger, like bigger's better, right? And then I reached a certain point where I quit thinking necessarily about the size of the individual job and thinking more about like the size of the amount of work we're doing and also like the quality of each individual job. Now I'm like easily as psyched about, like I'm just finishing this ADU accessory dwelling unit that's like 400 square feet. It's the coolest project I've done. I finished this little remodel. It's a 1,200 square foot remodel. Like those jobs, I've gotten more disproportionate amount of pleasure from the quality of like how we were able to transform those buildings than I ever would have gotten out of a $1 to whatever $1 million new house. I just think that, I don't know what my point is other than that I think we all sort of pick our poisons in terms of what our goals are, what we're shooting for in terms of whether it be like the size of the project monetarily or the size of the project as a function of square footage or just the quality level of the project, which is what I'm a little more focused on these days.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think someone just approached me they're like, hey, can you do this product? The budget's like 2.2 million. And I was like, that's cool. But I gotta what's the client like? What are they about? What's the design? And like, I would rather learn the design part of it and meet the client and then figure out what that budget is. You get me? Like just to be like, hey, is this a good fit for us? Like, I don't want to put my guys in harm's way. I've already done that. And it's been a poor mistake on my part that, I didn't vet a client the right way and it became a nightmare. So I think that's what I'm trying to,
no doubt.
Before I take on that $8 million project, I want to do a better job of vetting that process because I've clearly not done it well enough over the last 3 years. And it bums me out.
Not even gotten into. We've been talking about the size of a job, like every job's created equal and like, you're just picking and choosing, but we spend more time looking for red flags with clients and with architects. And we never did get into.
Dude, give me the top 5 red flags. What do you got?
I mean, that's all we look for. That's like, I'm just eyes wide open all the time. I'm talking to a person. I tell clients, I'm like, you're interviewing me. I'm interviewing you right now. My sales right now is trying to decide which jobs I'm not going to do. I'm just really transparent with people. I mean, it's a relationship thing. And I want to, not every relationship's made for success. That's with people in marriages. And it's true with builders and clients. And I feel like that's way more important than the dollar value of a job. Much rather work for, I think anybody who's been at it long enough is looking for those right relationships.
Unless you haven't been in it long enough and you don't know.
The
cheat code's only going to work so long.
I'm just pressing all the buttons until it unlocks something.
No, it's true. I feel like I've been
down,
stressing that the past year or so that I don't want to be bound necessarily to size of job or type of job. I want to work for customers who appreciate what we do. And customers who want us to be doing the work and people genuinely who are just nice and like appreciative and grateful for what we're doing. And like, obviously the money's important, but like there's a lot.
I think both those things are there. And I think you can educate clients like more and more. We push back. Like if I had a client recently say to me, I feel like we're starting out on the wrong foot. And I said, you know what? I feel exactly the same way. Like I didn't see any of this in these earlier conversations, but this is what I'm seeing today. And this scares me. And that reset the relationship. And from there it went totally positive. That was sort of a first time for me. But, I think that client relationship and going in and making sure that they're respectful of you and treating you like, I was listening, you guys were talking to that, he's the advocating for getting paid for your jobs. What was it, a couple of weeks ago?
Just on recently.
Construction fight or what the heck?
Contractor fight.
Contractor fight, yeah. And he's like, I feel like I've become way more in his camp of just advocating for getting paid, but even more than that, advocating for being treated like a professional in our field. And I think a lot of that's not the clients we get, but it's also educating those clients that that we have, and not allowing them to treat you like, you know, a servant in their jobs. And
That's the thing. Like, we may be in a service industry, but you can't treat anyone on this job like they're below you because you hired us to work on your house. And I feel like I just draw the line there where you have to respect us. You have to respect what we're doing. And if you don't, like, I don't want to be here. If it doesn't matter how much or how lucrative a job is, if the person treats you like shit and you're not enjoying yourself being there, it's a fail for you. It's not a good experience. It's not a good job. You look back on it and you have a bad taste in your mouth.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, I assume we've all been there. I've certainly been there a couple of times where we've built one of the best looking projects we've ever been on, but it's a miserable failure and we can't wait to get the heck out of there because we don't ever want to talk to that client again. Like, that's my biggest nightmare. I'd much rather not get paid on a job, but have the client love me, feel really good about how the job turned out, and just leave and learn from that, you know, and make money on the next project. But rather than to get paid and have a horrible, horrible client experience.
For
and
sure.
I think that's what is lost in the mix when you're talking about like those bigger dollar projects. I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I feel like the risk is higher. Like, the bigger dollar amount you're talking about, the better chance there is that client is not going to think about you the way that you want to be thought about, as an equal, as a partner in the project.
I think that's a real argument.
Not even that. Like, Tyler and I were talking about, the numbers get so big,
yeah,
that it can get like
when you were doing that roof, John, on the farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Where how much metal roof did you have there?
128 square.
And you were talking to me about how they put like the foam rod in there so when the sun hits it, it doesn't belly.
I'm like, an oil can.
Like, thank God somebody told you that, because it's like, if I make that mistake on a portico, it's like, how many square feet? And then you make that mistake on an entire house. There's room for profit, but I feel like oftentimes the risk on those jobs is so much greater than the offset in your profit or potential profit, that it's like, oh my God, the risk there.
But you know, it's funny. No one told me about that. I just remembered seeing metal roofs go on it, and I was always like, what is that? And then I asked that question. I was like, hey, you know, what's that from? And they're like, oh, that's called oil canning. And I remember watching Risinger did this amazing thing in Texas. And remember, that was like that car one.
Yeah.
And it was like on the vertical wall as well as on the horizontal. And it was okay to have it oil can. It was like part of it. It was just everywhere. And I'm like, how is that happening? And then I kept reading up on all of it. And it was like, oh, you can prevent it. How? And then saw my guy there, asked, I had it priced out 3 ways just because it was such a big number. You have to validate it. And then we ended up going with my guy anyways. But I was like, hey, how are you going to prevent this? You know, because if I look at it, like, you pull up, it's all you see. It is a huge amount of square footage. So how do we prevent this? And then the next thing was like, you know, he starts ice and water in it. And this is another thing I want to talk about is, like, everyone talks about how, like, you want to tell a sub or back charge a sub and you want to, like, to control the guy. People forget that sub is spread across 4 or 5 projects. So guess what? They got you by the balls more than you have them, because they can just totally poof and vanish or whatever. My point is like, I was like, hey, you know, this is ice and water. It's just regular, you know, not high temp and everything. I was like hearing, you got to do high temp, blah, blah. And then I called Grace straight up. I was like, hey, we're doing this. And then we're doing an underlayment on top of that, because the guy's like, hey, I don't want the metal roof to touch the Grace because it's been up there and it's sticky. So when he puts the panels on, it will start sticking, which makes total sense. And Grace was like, yeah, you don't have to worry about that. Cause I was like, come back in 3 years and on a hot August day and all that Grace is just bleeding through the soffit. That's what my mind went to. But in my same point is, you know, without experience, would I have asked any of those questions? And if it did oil can, would I have had the experience to then pivot on that and go, no,
you
this
got paid already.
No, but yeah, but
just kidding.
We still answer the phone. It's like, but no, I guess it's, you know,
I don't think that your risk, like going from a $2 million project to $8 million project, are you really going to see like $6 million worth of new problems? Like, I don't think so. Probably you're just going to see another kitchen, an outdoor kitchen, a basement kitchen, you see more of the same
I
details.
don't know. I think it's going to go from like a Marvin window to a Tischler or even higher.
I mean,
And the
maybe,
install of
maybe.
those, and then you put them in, then you don't protect them because you don't have the experience, and everyone keeps hitting them. Then you own these windows that are 14 months away that cost $1 billion, and then what? Then I haven't even gotten to the kitchen yet.
You don't like the floor finish.
That you got to ask yourself is, are you scaling up, doing more of what you already know, or are you doing a bunch of what you don't know? That's a really good.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's true.
I also feel it's like I've had issues with hardwood floor subcontractors, and on my job,
just bring your own hardwood in house, man.
Dude, I have. It's like
you're looking at them.
It's like 1,000 square feet, and then you guys are building a 12,000 square foot house, and I'm like, yeah, I had trouble when I had issues with 600 square feet of it, and then I look at those numbers, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, the amount of profit just scares me.
But it's not even like going back to it, Nick. It's not about the profit. It's literally, I didn't get a job that came online a little while ago. It didn't even come online. They approached me, cool job. They're like, do you think you can do this for 1.5? I'm like, I don't have drawings. They wanted me to commit, and I was trying to do the right thing instead of going, yes. And then they sent me their Pinterest, and it was like all steel doors, unbelievable details, kind of modern with a mix. And I felt like I looked at that Pinterest board, and then every IG account that came up matched it. And I was like, I was sucked into this whole vortex. And then I was like, there's no way for 1.7 you can do this. Like, then I was like, hey, what do you think about, heating? And they're like, radiant. I'm like, what kind of flooring? They're like 8-inch. I'm like, everything kept going higher. And I was like, I said to them point blank, I was like, I can't commit to this. That's me over committing. And then 3 months into this, I'm going to tell you it's 2.5 million, and there's no way that conversation is going to go well. So, and then someone else committed to it. And I was like, what? Talk to the architect. And that's the other thing we haven't talked about is at a certain level, you're going to then deal with the architect relationship, and you've almost committed to a product before you've even met that client to a certain point, meaning you've put all this, pre-construction into it, and that you may have fallen in love with the design. Then you hit a client that you're like, oh man. And I look at it like every time I meet a client, I need to change my approach, and it's a new challenge to have.
We've not talked about that at all. And it seems like we're probably near the end of the time you guys have, but we brought design in-house little over 2 years ago. And that just changed dramatically what that conversation looks like when someone comes to us and is looking, whatever they're asking. Having design in-house has just transformed how we operate, how we vet clients, how we vet their budget, how we manage that client through that early pipeline and into construction, and also how we manage the construction project once it's in the works. And I never thought I wanted to be a design build, because I had my hands full for so many years just trying to execute well as a builder. But there's no doubt in my mind that we are a much, much better company by almost any measure with design in-house than we were prior. And we still work with some of those architect relationships we had beforehand, but now it's just a whole different product that we're putting out than it was when we were strictly build with no design in-house.
I think controlling design is huge. And I don't think that the scale matters from a small job to a huge job. If you're involved from that early on and have somebody going through a lot of that, I don't think that there's a better way. If you have the capacity to do that, and it's not just overwhelming you.
I didn't used to think that, but I feel that way 100% now. And what I realized too is that we were always doing design. We just weren't getting paid for it, and we weren't doing a very good job of it. But you're always in there designing shit and figuring it out and helping. You've got a client who comes in, they're like, we don't have a design, but can we just wing it? And you want that job and you want to see it happen soon, so you do. Or you're in there and things change, and you're in there using Google SketchUp or just doing it by hand, or
even with architects, it's the same thing. Like my PMs get so involved with the design, even when it's architect driven. And then Ken here in the shop from a cabinet side, it's like we're working with designers and drafters and architects, but we're still sitting around the table, digesting it, and then further designing it and trying to improve upon it and put our spin on it. So it's like we try not to advertise that we're design build for similar reasons, but we have considered handling a lot more of the design in-house at some point.
Well, I'll tell you this, like I had the same, so I spent 8 years before we brought design in-house, and I never wanted to. And then all of a sudden, like it was an absolute necessity. Like I've been using the same, again, I live in a small town. I was working largely with one architecture firm, which had, 3 principals and some interns, and then a couple other smaller architects. And I went from them doing all my work to all of a sudden we had this team of like 30 people, and I didn't have projects to do because the architects were working, just weren't able to put those jobs out in a timely fashion. And so all of a sudden we didn't have enough work to do, even though the market was super busy and we had a bunch of jobs lined up, but they were all in line with these architects who were doing other people's design work. And I just saw the writing on the wall that day. I was like, we've got to hire someone right now. And luckily an architect who we'd worked with, he designed the very first house I built. He designed my house. He's designed a bunch of stuff. He was working by himself. I approached him. I was like, hey, I'd love for you to come work with us. He's like, yes, I'll do it tomorrow. And it just worked out. Now, I mean, it was fortuitous, and now we have a handful of people that work underneath of him. And it's just been revolutionary. Like, it's just like, we're like a different company than we were before. And the speed with which we're able to take a job, you reach out to me and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, whatever type of remodel. Like, yeah, I'm going to bring my architect over and we'll look at it and we'll write you a proposal, and might be able to start in a month or 2 on the design. And, what's your timeline look like? And it's just sounds way, way different than saying, yeah, here's an architect I really like, or here's 3 architects we work with, hopefully they can get you in line within the next couple of months. And hopefully you still want to work with me once they get done with you. That's just a way different chain of custody. And also I think through the construction process with those clients, knowing that architect's on your team, now we've had 2 years of designing and building and executing and managing those projects with the architects on board. It's just a different scenario.
But on the flip side, that architect could bring you work.
It does. He does bring me work. That job we're doing, that we're working on in Zionsville, that that we're looking at.
That's where Festool is, right? Just kidding.
But we've had multiple projects where they reached out to the architect because they knew him. They're following him. They've been seeing his work in a magazine, and they reached out to his website, which is still active. And he's like, oh no, I'm with Loren Wood now. And, and all of a sudden we're doing this project together. So,
but I guess my point is that I look at it like every project we go into that's client based. Our goal is to win the designer and the architect out of that, and it's work. So now, like what we did year 2 with a bunch of projects that weren't our architect. They were basically, the client brought us in. Now we're getting all those calls on year 3 that are those architects that we won over.
And that's
true.
Huge. And I was worried about that. And for a year, easily a year, I didn't advertise anywhere that we were doing design. I mean, of course, those architects I work with knew because we live in a small community, but I didn't want them to feel like I was advertising or against, I was competing with them because I didn't want to lose their recommendations. But what I've realized is that over the last 10 years, every single client that ever came to me, I sent to those architects. How many people did they send back to me? Tiny percentage of that. Like, I think for me, it's been a one-way street. And now it's a small town and we're one of the best builders in town. And those architects don't have to recommend people to us, but those people are going to find us anyway. And we're going to have a good shot at doing the job, whether or not they do. So for me, I no longer feel any pressure against advertising or competing against those architect firms because they need a good builder, and whether or not, Johnny, like you are competing with those architects you work with, they still need they can draw whatever the hell they want. But if they don't have someone like you to come in there and execute, they've got nothing.
It's going to sound weird, but I might be a dime a dozen up here in New England.
The builders or the architects?
The people that need to execute. Like there's a ton of architects here, and there's just as many skilled or more skilled builders than I, and have a better oiled team.
That's not the case here. You come on down to the Midwest. It's a different.
And just buy everybody. The whole town.
I guess.
Just so I can clear the air. Zionsville is where I stayed when I went to Festool.
Okay.
Oh,
I looked it up. I looked up the Buffalo Wild Wings street
Oh,
view because
God.
I knew I remember going there, and so that's exactly.
So where is Festool?
It is in Lebanon.
Yes.
there's people that like are alcoholics that say, "Hey, you got to go to this packing and
Yeah,
take a
Buffalo
left."
Wild
He
Wings.
just goes Buffalo Wild Wings.
Probably
I
because
just
you
re-
remember because you.
I just
pooped your
remember there was
pants
nothing else
afterwards.
there was nothing else to go to.
My
and-
stomach hurt the whole next
That's
day.
what, you know what? That's what people are listening to this. They're going to take away that Zionsville.
Yeah.
Only restaurant in Zionsville is Wild Wings.
It's Buffalo,
Buffalo
Wild
Wild.
Wings. It was
It's
across
probably
the
a
street.
super nice town and you just trashed it.
It
There's
is-
like a mom and pop wing shop there that's world renowned.
Nope, didn't see it.
It is a
Didn't
super
see it.
nice town. I think we
Yeah.
just made it in the wrong light.
Hey, service was great. It was clean.
Give him a review while you're on there.
I should.
Drop a review.
I'm going to. I'll do it just for us. All right, Loren, this was awesome.
Thanks
know,
for having me on, fellas.
I feel like there was so many different topics that you wanted to go down, but I feel like we covered a lot here. And despite you guys trying, you still didn't scare me out of saying yes to a
Yeah.
big job.
I think
Listen,
we-
I'm
It's
We
like
can
impressed.
try. We can try again.
It's like
I'm
an addict.
impressed
They
with,
just don't know.
with your growth because we're what's 3.5 hours. The first hour into it, I was like, he's not going to open up. And at this
Yeah.
point, you're fully open. Your,
So,
your
how many people did you
podcast-
hire while we're on the podcast?
Your
Did you hire,
podcast
like, 2 more
growth was
people?
good.
You're killing me. That was-
Just for the record, this Buffalo Wild Wings has 687 reviews.
Really?
Yes.
That's great.
So-
There's nothing else to do in Zionsville or whatever it's called.
I'm
That's
telling you,
almost as
Let's go
that's
on and
almost
leave another
more
review.
That's almost more than we have.
It's close.
I'm losing some followers right now. There's some really good builders in Zionsville that are just like unfollowing.
Yeah.
It's a small town. It's probably like 3 other builders, so we can do the math and figure
I was
out
gonna
who you've been
say,
talking about all day.
I'm Loren speaking here. I love Zionsville. Beautiful town. Lots of restaurants.
Lots of restaurants.
Loren,
Amazing.
where can people find you, man?
Yeah, Instagram, I think, is Loren Wood Builders. My name is spelled Loren. It's the very, very masculine spelling if you're curious. Or LorenWoodBuilders.com. Yeah, check us out for sure on Instagram or Facebook or website or whatever. And-
Awesome.
Dude, one last question is, what would you have told yourself, your younger self, that you know now?
Don't go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
I don't know, man. I think I don't know if I'd do it all over again. If I could start over, it was pretty hard, but
Or you drink more water? Like, what are you thinking?
Don't
Yeah.
be a teacher.
yeah, nope. I think my teaching experience was good. I don't know, man. I can't look back like that. I think don't be scared. I had a builder, really good friend of mine who's a remodeler when I started this company. I've already sworn enough on this episode, so this if it's here like earmuffs. But he said to me when I started this, he's like, Loren, so I'm gonna give you one piece of advice. I said, no, I'm not gonna say this out loud. I shouldn't.
We can bleep it. We
He
can
said,
bleep it.
don't be a pussy. He said, if there's stuff out there that's hard, he said, just do it. He said, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna fail. He said, you can always find a subcontractor who's gonna get in and do it. But if you want to learn and you want to do a good job, don't be scared. Get in there and do it and do the heavy lifting. And he was right. I think about that all the time. Like, I think 60% of our battle, certainly there's knowledge and experience and intuition and, a bunch of other stuff, but a lot of it's just being willing to get in there and do it and not being scared to make mistakes. And that's why I sort of feel like if Nick wants to do an $8 million job, he probably knows enough at this point to look at that job and think like, that's something I can execute. I'm not going to be a pussy. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to do it.
3 hours and 24 minutes in, and you think he has enough, then he probably doesn't.
Okay.
I don't feel like we have to bleep that. In that context, I'm fine with that word.
Well, So if I could go back and offer that advice to myself 10 years ago, I'd probably just offer that same advice and just double down on it.
If I could go back in time, I'd probably not say the P word. Man,
This
that
is
was
good.
awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, fellas. This was fun.
Lauren, be well, man.
Yeah.
Be in touch.
Likewise. Have a
Thanks,
good
Have a
night.
dude.
good one.
Cheers.
I got nobody tonight, guys. I didn't schedule anybody for 3.5 hours in.
I can see I left the waiting room approvals on. Next week we got Paul, right?
Paul, who?
From Kochman.
Oh, Kochman, yes. Local.
He local cabinet shop down the street from us. He wants to talk coughing over here, not COVID. He wants to talk about quality and design.
We should talk about bad talks, yo.
Well, I don't even know if they're doing bad talks with COVID, but he wants to talk about how quality isn't always an easy thing to measure or communicate, but it's absolutely essential. So
He's a legendary around here.
Don't
Right here.
know him.
We
Really
should do a follow-up for Tyler. What'd you call him? Bonus Frank?
Yeah, Bonus Frank. Is that his name, Frank?
Yeah, Bonus Frank from
Bonus Frank.
our bonus episode last week.
Yeah, so I talked to Frank. He went back and he tried to control the punch list by talking with them face to face and then following up. And
Yeah.
he's, I think, 1 week out from closing out. He said they're still like chirping his ear, but they're not sending emails and doing all that. So the toxicity through face to face contact is down, and it's
Good.
not being followed up through email. And he said he's powering through it. He's gonna make
That's
it happen.
awesome.
He's not gonna walk away.
That's awesome.
Nobody's been murdered.
No.
All right, this is good.
Well, it's crazy. His whole family's involved. Like I don't
know.
know. We've heard
Wild.
that yet. His mom, his wife,
Yeah.
himself, and his son.
Well, that's good. I'm glad he was able to kind of diffuse the situation and just power through it, because I'm sure it would ate away at him over time, especially even his son. It probably would kind of just sat with his son the wrong way if they just walked away from it.
So it's a better lesson for them as a,
For
as a
sure,
whole group.
absolutely. Yeah.
Bonus.
Bonus Frank.
We don't have
Miss
any
Bonus Frank.
We don't have any new reviews on
Yeah.
iTunes.
What the?
I know.
Really?
but
Reviews in November?
Hold on, but we are number 177 in the top 200 for episodes last week with Aaron Witt in business podcasts.
Really?
Nice. I
Yeah.
haven't checked the stats in forever.
Well, I
love
checked them today, John.
That. Attaboy.
Just for
Maybe
you.
And that's today.
That
Wait
is
till Bonus
today.
Frank drops.
That's 3 days.
See what happens. We're gonna be one. Number one. We're coming for the number one spot.
So we do need more reviews.
Bonus Frank.
Yeah.
We're so close to 800.
Bonus Frank.
We are. So get on iTunes, drop us a review if you're digging it. And if you're not digging it, you know what to do. On our Instagram, Modern Craftsman, there's a Survey Monkey. John looks at it religiously before he goes to bed. Make sure that we're adapting
do read it.
accordingly.
It
I
sends
know
me an
you
email. We have 84 responses.
And we get good guest reviews. You guys have been great with the Mike Rowe thing. We are still actively working to get him on the podcast. And we have a couple great guests coming up, but always looking to get to the small guys as well as some of the big heavy hitters and get their take on not only our industry, but anything craftsmanship oriented.
I mean, even on the reviews, if you want to hop on and just tell us what your favorite episode is, so we can kind of circle back and see what,
Format. Yeah.
yeah, and how that worked, and then kind of shape things that way.
Yeah,
It's a
you got
quick, easy way to hop on, leave a review. Just even tell us what number you liked.
a few of you guys
quick
have asked
why,
about
what you didn't like.
the earlier episodes. So we found out iTunes doesn't catalog everything.
Correct.
So we are going to work on getting that stuff uploaded to a website. So if you guys want to go back to some of the earlier
It stops at
episodes,
100.
Yeah. So we're gonna work on that over the next couple we'll say a couple months, get that queued up and offer that up to those that are interested. So sit tight for that.
Hang
we'll-
tight.
Yeah. We'll see you
Go
guys
get
next
yourself some Buffalo Wild Wings. Chill out.
Yes.
Buffalo
In-
Wild Wings and
Zionsville.
chill.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate you listening. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Here comes the cold weather. Just imagine a siding, trim, and molding product that you can install properly in any temperature. No need to seal or paint end cuts, no clearance restrictions from grade, roofs, or patios, and the freedom to paint it any color that you want when the timing is right. That's what you get with Duration. And to learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com.
To any customers out there who have heard from their contractor that they can't be doing outside exterior work this time of year, they can use Boral and keep working.
Straight up.
You know,
Keep on work. Put your
don't
jacket
believe
on.
the hype.
Get outside.
Get
Yep.
a heated jacket.
No
Shut
excuses.
shut your mouth.
There's no crying in baseball.
Seriously.